Touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Gather yourself together with Fringes. Fringes is a new social networking app for the community. Are you looking to study, teach, cook, play, sew, and travel? Perhaps you're new to the area and are tired of spending Sabbaths alone? Are you looking for a place to post your events, products, and services? Rejoice! Fringes is here. Download free today. Available on Google Play and the App Store.
HebrewWay.com, high-quality custom Israelite apparel store. The place to find scripture-based attire for men, women, and children of all ages. We have a wide range of t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, caps, beanies, and bags, available in a full range of sizes. Also, the ideal place to find Israelite gifts for family and friends. HebrewWay.com is geared toward awakening men and women and especially the youth worldwide. Try our uniquely crafted collection with free shipping on eligible items. Help spread the word of the Most High. Visit us at HebrewWay.com. That's HebrewWay.com.
Lila Tov, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak. This is your host, Mayana Hassofaret, and tonight we have a very special topic that we're going to explore together. Those of you who are in the know that just on Tuesday we had a very special guest, Ron Divine Prospect, and he was sharing with us his recent study on the pre-exilic tradition or custom of libation. And we were looking at and exploring whether or not this is one of the pre-exilic, and there are many pre-exilic customs, traditions, and actions and activities that we participated in, and whether or not this is one that we should resurrect. We got a lot of great feedback about that particular show. If you missed it, you missed a great conversation, but you can find it on www.youtube.com/Debate Talk for You. The title of the show was The Relationship Challenge. It was a special edition of the Relationship Challenge hosted by EMUNAH Israel. Are all rituals righteous? And that happened right here on Debate Talk for You on Tuesday. We have a lot of great conversation happening in the comment section over here. It was not quite as many comments as we expected, huh, Muna?
Not at all. All praise be to the Most High, the Holy One of creation. I guess the people are thinking, Sister Rana. I think, thinking is good. Sometimes silence is good, So hopefully we'll hear some feedback.
Well, it wasn't all quiet on the Western Front, as they say. We did find that there were people, as you said, thinking critically about the conversation. Some things about what Ron presented, some things about what we presented, and as expected, it didn't go well with everyone. That we took the position of maybe this needs a little more teasing out. Maybe we should think about this one more time before we present it to the people. I think even Ron was able to say that not everyone would be ready to receive it, and he had his own reasons for making that statement. I think we had a different reason for agreeing. What would you say?
Agreed. As always, there are many things that are presented, and I look forward to getting into the show. There's many things that are presented that it behooves us as a people, if anything that we have done here as we share on Debate Talk for You, is to have the opportunity to revisit some things that we have settled on or thought we knew. You understand what I'm saying? The whole platform is based on bringing your ideas into the lion den before the people to be subject to scrutiny. Some people are defending their ideas, and others are coming to the table to hear what the other has to offer before they make a decision. And so this is important as we begin to revisit and incorporate certain things into our lives in present day. We have to see whether or not they served our foreparents and whether or not there's something that will serve us and benefit us as a community today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that we got to see a little bit of that with some of the comments. I don't know if maybe we should read some of the comments that we heard from the previous show. Do you have that pulled up? I think I can pull it up rather quickly.
I don't have it yet. I think the listening audience might want to know what's the name of the show. I don't think I caught it. What was the name of the show, Sister Mayana?
Tonight's show. Did I not tell them tonight? So this is why I keep
you just jumped right on in, like cold calling and stuff. I'm like, what's that?
This is why I keep you right. Tonight's show is called Tell 'Em Why You Mad. Tell 'Em Why You Mad. I don't know if you guys remember that intro from, we can't even remember the artist, but it's like, tell 'em why you mad, son. Tell 'em why you mad. And again, it's because it is because there was some pushback in different spaces, even in our comment section and some of our private spaces, we got some feedback where there were people that were actually just offended that we sought to pull his coattail at all. Like, who are you? And then there were others that misunderstood some of our perspectives, and then there were others that who initially felt as if maybe we shouldn't rock the boat, but later listened to some of our concerns and said, you know what, I didn't think about that, and bethought themselves. And so the title of tonight's show is Tell 'Em Why You're Mad, and it also has a subtitle that basically invites everyone to come back to the table. We're going to look at some of the questions and concerns we had about the pre-exilic custom we discussed on Tuesday, and also the problem with problem resolution in the community. Anyone that has been following our programs, both Under the Palm and our Big Sister group, our Big Sister show, the Relationship Challenge, you know, we always really, at the crux of the matter, have a question for the community that will approach how we can better communicate, how we can better come together so that we can reconcile our differences and do some of that rebuilding we keep talking about. So for those of you who are tuning in hoping that this was going to be a public flogging of Divine, that's not what this is about. It is about, let's go back and look at some of the things. We want to open up the phone lines and let those who weren't able to ask the questions that they wanted to ask on Tuesday, they can ask them today. We don't know if Ron's schedule will allow him to participate this evening, which is why we didn't put him on the flyer today. But we're here, so if you listened on Tuesday and you have questions for us about some of the things we brought up regarding the pre-exilic custom of libations and our concerns, then please press 1. The number here is 319-527-6239. And we're going to look at some of the problems with problem resolution. Are we comfortable talking to one another? Do we feel as if we have the space and the permission to say, listen, can I holler at you, without personalizing it? Everything isn't personal. Every question, every concern isn't a personal attack. It isn't meant to diminish or devalue anyone else's study or position in this walk, but to say, I see you, and I'd like to talk to you about some things. And sometimes we find that problem resolution has problems. So today's show is about being honest, about telling the person, tell them why you're mad, tell them why you're concerned, and looking at some of the pushback that one might receive when we try to do diligent inquiry. EMUNAH and I have many, many stories about how diligent inquiry goes wrong. So thank you very much, EMUNAH, for reminding me to tell the people why we're here. And we'll go right into the conversation. I think right now it's just you and I. I think Sheikah will be here shortly. Malaka is definitely running. Like she has a different, she had a previous obligation. This is one of our impromptu shows. As you know, Monday nights are usually the nights that we occupy. Every other night, Under the Palm is featured on Debate Talk for You, and the remaining Mondays, or the initial Mondays, belong to the Relationship Challenge. So EMUNAH, since you and I were the ones that were on that first show that generated so much buzz, even if it was a low buzz, about the libations and the concerns about resurrecting some of these ancient but problematic customs. Maybe we should go ahead and kind of give a recap to the people before we send them off to watching the original show. And I encourage all of you to listen to that first broadcast, of course, after you listen to this one. And we will put the link in the box so that you have access to that. EMUNAH, what stood out the most for you? First, let me check in with Sal. Sal, do we have Sheikah yet?
Yep, she is here. She's on the line right now. She's live. She's here with us.
All right. Hey, Sheikah, how are you? Sister, is she there? Is she live?
Yeah, 469.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I said, how are you?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. EMUNAH and I are going to kind of delve in a little bit, do a little recap of the last show. Were you able to catch the last show on Tuesday, hosted by EMUNAH?
Oh, yeah. I was able to catch it. I think I came in a little bit late, but I was able to catch what you were saying as far as the questions as to who was supposed to conduct the ritual, when it was supposed to be conducted, and things of that nature. Yeah, so I did hear that, and then eventually Ron came on, and I was able to hear that as well.
Yeah, right. That was great that he was able to come on and represent his own thought personally and live. We really appreciated him coming through. So where are you on? I know everybody has a different opinion. So where are you on this proposition of reestablishing, revisiting, and maybe even reenacting personally some of these libations? Is that something that you think that you would be comfortable doing personally?
It is with the proper training. Only because, and I say this, basically my take on it at first was like, what is this about, you know? And it took me some time to get to the videos and actually look at it. And so as he's doing things, he's going scripture by scripture. And so I know that we have to, of course, examine the context of when are we supposed to do this and who's supposed to be doing it and where, you know, all those type of things. But it's something that I think that we do need to go back and examine. And the reason why I say that is because we've lost a lot of customs when we talk about pre-exilic versus Second Temple Judaism. There are differences. There were also different people, to my understanding, who were appointed over certain things. It wasn't like the people were just, you know, having their own people. There was a rulership over people who were kind of governing even what went on in Hebrew communities. So I would say it's something that we need to examine. I'm not totally against it. I would like to know the parameters around it. And as long as it's biblical, I really don't have a problem with it. Now, the 2 or 3 witnesses, I heard EMUNAH say that, and I was concerned about that. Like, do we have 2 or 3 witnesses? I wasn't really sure. I didn't count them up, you know. So it's something that, you know, needs to be reexamined. And it's something that manifests in the community physically as far as a common practice that you see. And people seem to pick it up and move along with it. And so when we see things like that, as we're examining people waking up with the spirit of, wait, we know we're more than this, what happened? If we're examining that, then we also have to examine the things that we are holding on to and waking up to as well. So that's my position.
I think that's a great point, and I believe that Ron brought that point out as well, that there are a lot of things that we are rehearsing right now. We don't have a lot of, or we don't have the full understanding of, and yet we're practicing. He even voiced the concern that maybe if we look too closely at it, that we can discourage the people because they have become invested in some of these performances. EMUNAH, you remember that part of the conversation where it was just, hey, well, what about the fringes? What about Passover? What about a number of things that we consider sacred that we attach to our reclamation of the identity, like the high holy days, like our fringes, does, in your estimation, does looking at this custom of libation upset the apple cart, so to speak, about these other rituals that we have accepted without much hesitation?
I think it does. It leaves a lot of us in limbo, where the mind begins to wonder, what about this, what about that? In the direction that I'm approaching the conversation as it relates to healing, I think it's necessary. In order to heal, you do need to upset the apple cart. In order to detox, you are going to have die-off syndrome. You're going to feel a little bit sick. You're going to feel like you're not getting better. You do need to bring up the toxins to the top. You understand what I'm saying? So when we look at it like that, then it's okay if we feel unsettled. It's okay if we don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's okay if we're so to say, spiritually naked to a certain degree, where then now we can allow the Creator we're in a humbled state at that point. And at which point the Creator can begin to deal with us as a people, because the reality is whatever we're doing currently is causing more fracture than it is causing unity. You know what I'm saying? Whatever we're doing currently is re-injuring those who are already injured. So upsetting the apple cart at this point is what needs to be done, in my estimation. It needs to be done because what is being done currently is not and has not been helping. So we have to look at, is there a deeper issue going on? And we know there's a deeper issue going on. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, there are deeper issues that, in my estimation, we need to actually be willing to look at in this space and time. And conversations like this allow us those opportunities.
Absolutely. I think that anyone that has been a long-time listener of the Relationship Challenge and newly to the Under the Palm Hebrew Women Speak segments are pretty accustomed to you and I upsetting the apple cart and having no problem with that. And even in these spaces that are considered, quote, sacred, close quote, and the assumption that, you can't go there, or, don't question that patriarch, don't look at what that person is, don't look too close at Dawid, don't look too close at Moshe or Abraham, you can't do that. And you and I are just like, we absolutely will. And so, and we have been doing that for 3 years now on Debate Talk for You. Once again, shout out to Sal Showtime for allowing us to have such a platform. It is my understanding that we have at least one caller that has already pressed 1. Thank you so much for wanting to join the conversation. Sal, let that person in, please.
All right, so 916-747, you're live.
Shalom, y'all. Can y'all hear me? All right. So, I think I don't know if you can hear me or not. This is Sister Ashanti. Was somebody to say something? Because the phone sounded like it was going out.
You loud and clear. What's going on?
Not much.
For the conversation.
Shalom, Maya. What's going down? Shalom, EMUNAH. Shalom, Sal. Shalom, Shika. Whomever else was on the line, I didn't catch it.
Hello.
But okay. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Before I did listen to the show. I think I finally got to listen to it yesterday. But libations. Now I understand you say you look at something or you look at something to examine it. Are you looking at something to examine it, or just push something on the table, push some information out, or are you looking to correct something with saying, okay, after we examine it, and if we see an error, then are we to go ahead and correct it? And then another question I have is pertaining to Ron Divine's stance on libations. I think after like the 2-hour mark, he mentioned briefly about people who believe in Yeshua the Messiah, And he says, people who believe in Yeshua, the Messiah, believe they are still priests and are able to do these things. When you guys say libations is offerings, are you saying that no offerings can be done, no physical offerings can be done, and are these offerings in your eyes only offerings for sin, or are you not to do any type of offerings at all? There's like about 5 different types of offerings or sacrifices. You know what I mean? The word there in the Hebrew. I'm not even gonna bring it up. But are you saying that there are no physical offerings to be done, even if it's outside of the sin, burnt, or hatas offerings or olah offerings? And are you saying if there are offerings to be done, are there not to be any physical acts or physical materials used, such as wine or oil? Are you saying that we can only, offer praise with our lips or things of that nature? So just to wrap up what I'm asking, like, are you saying that because you say Ron Divine is not a priest, and, he believes that he may be a priest according to, the new covenant. I won't go deep off into that. I know about that, but are you saying he's not a priest even according to his belief in Yeshua as a certain order? And are you saying there are no offerings to be done out of the 5 offerings that were given, to the priest to be able to do? Are you saying, okay, are you equating these libations to just libations for sin offerings or meal offerings or other type of offerings? Are you doing away with offerings at all? No wine, no oil, no cakes. You can only give praise for your lips. And I yield after that.
Okay, that sounds like, thank you so much for that. I heard several questions, and because they were kind of, I think some of them were a little overlapping, and some of them I think sounds like there were assumptions made. I don't recall saying that we didn't think Ron was anything, and I don't think that we said anything about some of the things I don't recall us saying. But I did hear these questions, and correct me if I don't have your questions correct. You wanted to know, 1, are we examining for the purpose of correcting if we find errors? 2, are we looking at all types of offerings and not just the topic that we're actually on? And 3, are you asking if we are questioning his claim because he's saying that it's attached to this New Testament thought? Is that one of your questions also?
Yeah, that's my question. Because he didn't go deep into it, but he mentioned it briefly that those who believe in Yeshua are under a new covenant and they're under a new order, and that, for that matter, he would consider himself a priest. As he brought up the original with Exodus 19, was supposed to be a nation of priests, and tied into us. For us, 1 Peter. Chapter 2.
Okay, so do you want to take the questions first?
There was a series of questions, and thank you for the question. There was a series of questions. I'm trying to see which one I would try and address. As it relates to our offering to the Creator in the land of our exile, which is important to note that when we go into exile as a people, we are deemed unclean. Okay. Regardless of, so we're practicing, we're rehearsing things, clean and unclean laws, but we're deemed unclean. We see even in the land when the preparation for Pesach was not yet so, and the priests were unclean, the actual physical priests, they had to wait till the following month to keep the Pesach in the time, if I'm not mistaken, of Hezekiah. I say that to say the thought that if our foreparents knew that even if they were in the land and they did have the priest, but they did not go through the purification process, they're unclean and their offerings will not be accepted. And we are amongst the nations kicked out of the land, exiled. And I believe I shared yesterday some scriptures that related to the Most High saying and letting us know as a people, our foreparents, when our offerings will be accepted, where our offerings will be accepted, and how these physical offerings will be accepted. And so if we take it on a level where we back up a little bit and humble ourselves, realize where we are and how the Creator asks for us to receive, to give that which He requires of us. And that if we're not in that position, then one would have to assume that we cannot offer these things that we're seeking to offer. I will submit one more thing. Even in the situation that was given for something to be looked at, which is Jacob's situation, in Jacob, before 35:14 in Genesis comes along, Jacob says to his company, when the Creator says, now go back to Bethel, he says to them, put away these foreign deities from you and cleanse yourself, because now you're going to go in to approach the Creator. And he's going back into the land. So I would say, as it regards to all of the offerings, and it's not just this particular libation, it's all of the offerings that Israel seeks to give the Creator, because we want to show whatever we want to show. I would submit for consideration whether or not it's actually being accepted, and whether or not our attempt to go against what it says is actually defiance as opposed to obedience. So I'll answer that question and allow the panelists to answer the next question. I'll relinquish the mic.
I would agree. I think that EMUNAH just made a very profound observation that sometimes in our attempts at obedience or compliance, that we are actually performing defiance of a thing. To address your questions, one, when we take anything to task, when we go to examine anything, it's never in vain, because we simply don't have that kind of time. If we examine something and assess the matter and decide that there are errors in it, it would obviously be to the point that we are going to correct these errors or avoid making it error so that no correction is necessary. As all of us know, obedience is better than to sacrifice. So rather than move into the space where correction is necessary, it's better just to avoid falling into error in the first place, which is why we examine preemptively and proactively instead of as an after act. With regard to the question, it sounds like, are we dismissing his claims simply because it has messianic ties? The answer to that is a simple no. None of the objections we raised had anything to do with any type of New Testament affiliations. We never brought up New Testament affiliations. In fact, that was introduced by a caller. We never touched it. And it's always interesting that when a conversation about Torah is being had, accusations about someone being uncomfortable with the New Testament gets inserted in that conversation where it's not being had. And I think that's one of the issues that we have here. It's the problem with problem resolution, is that new problems get introduced and complicate what is not quite that complicated. These are one of those things, that issues that belong to the individual or individuals get inserted into a general conversation about a completely different thing. EMUNAH, in her answer, dealt with all of the other possible variables and offerings and what she was adding to her concern about this libation offering. For me, I won't do that. For me, the conversation I'm having is about libations. The other possible potential offerings and how they get affected, that would be a different conversation, because they're different offerings, and that's not what he is talking about. So for me, I tend to talk about what is on the table in front of me, and I'm not looking at anything else right now. Right now, my concerns are about this reintroduction to libations, or instituting libations in a contemporary space where all of the things that we had in place when we established offerings, all those things are not here. It would be like trying to be in a vehicle or something else that requires many moving parts and saying, okay, well, we have 3 out of 10 of the necessary things, so let's just give it a go. And for me, that's not a bet I'd be willing to make when I know the thing needs 10 of those things to work appropriately. That's my approach to those things. So what I'm looking at is all of the accoutrements or all of the requirements in place for us to do this thing. Whether or not the question is not whether or not we, meaning Israel, but we, meaning every individual. Do we have permission to do these things? Do we have permission? Another thing that is interesting, because the New Testament did get brought up, this idea that if it's the New Testament concept that is giving permission or giving the framework to operate as a priest, then my question then becomes, does that in any way unseat or disturb the idea that we are looking at a pre-exilic condition? If the condition is Hellenistic, from the Hellenistic era, from the Common Era, and not from the pre-exilic era, how are we transporting, how are we overlaying two completely different eras? Can we really use the Common Era to justify a pre-exilic custom? Or do we need the conditions of the pre-exilic custom to make that work? And that would be a new question, because it wasn't. I didn't hear Ron initially use his New Testament position as the animus or the reason why he believes that he is qualified to do this thing. I believe that was introduced by the caller, or it wasn't something that I heard earlier. Emuna, was that part of the YouTube presentation, that the advent of the New Testament is one of the things that initiates a whole new range of people into priesthood who wouldn't originally be considered priests?
Not at all. And again, hopefully the brother has an opportunity to call in and continue the conversation. If not, you can definitely leave comments in the comment section. The reason why I went to the presentation, my computer wouldn't let me be great, to show you that this is a conversation that was had on Divine Prospects Kingdom Harmony channel. So you can definitely go there and look at the conversation that was had. I asked a number of questions. I did not assume, and the New Testament wasn't brought up during that conversation. I read that earlier on in the presentation, and this is why I gave the presentation, and I kept repeating myself, because you weren't able to see what I was seeing or what I was speaking about. And so the conversation was, look at Jacob. He's the best illustration of being able to do offerings, pre-exilic offerings. And then from there, he gave me that there's a number of other people. And after Jacob, I was looking for who are these other people? Where are these other instances, so that I can take a look at them? Because if something is being, and this is where I heard Sheikah say it as well, and I heard another brother I said 2 to 3 witnesses, and we had a little conversation about whether or not 2 to 3 witnesses had to do with criminal cases. But the reality is, it's wisdom, it's hakmah, for us to say we're going to pick up something and reinstate it, and we have one instance that doesn't necessarily apply to us. It behooves us to look and search through the text to see whether or not this is done in another place and time, and if it is, does it have positive feedback, or does it have negative repercussions? And that was the reason why I said, okay, if Jacob doesn't apply because he was the covenant child, which had nothing to do with the New Testament. Actually, it was Brother Maria who called in and asked the question at the end about libation being connected to communion. And I told him, in truth, I haven't done that study. And Brother Divine Prospect came in and began to speak to him in regard to that. And so, I asked him if the communion goes in your mouth, it doesn't go on the floor. And so that's pretty much where I left it. And then Divine wanted to continue the conversation with him. So this conversation, it wasn't started in or had nothing to do with how one relates to the New Testament, because the conversation is pre-exilic and the New Testament is post-exile. So, like my sister Maya said, they're two totally different time periods, you see, and post-exile cannot affect to the degree of what was being done and sanctioned in pre-exilic times. So hopefully that answers the question.
This is Ashanti still. May I get two questions clarified? Because of something you said, which was profound, EMUNAH, and I've been studying this a lot lately. You said while we're in exile, certain things are not maybe done. My question to you is, or anybody, when you say exile, when the children of Israel came out of Egypt into the wilderness, was that considered exile or was it not? Because the children of Israel did receive the Torah instructions while they were in the wilderness. The wilderness was not their land. That wasn't the promised land. And number two, when you say all offerings are off the table, are you saying offerings such as the Shalomim or peace or Todah, thank you offering, is off the table as well? Because, my honor brought up a good point. She said obedience is better than sacrifice. But that sacrifice or that offering of Shalomim, it had nothing really to do with obedience. It's pretty much to say, like, thank you, or it's a free will offering just to give the Most High honor and glory and praise. And so that would be, considered a physical offering as well. And then, in Numbers 15, it does say while you're able to offer an offering or a sacrifice of the Todah or a peace offering, which is included, the drink libation is included in Numbers 15, I think in the first 5 verses somewhere. And lastly, I'll ask, if anybody's offering libations because they believe they are a priest, according to the renewed covenant, is that always tied to, okay, we're giving it to a foreign deity? Are we saying people who would do libations as a Shalomim or peace or a thank you offering are offering it to a foreign deity when the Most High, put it out? I mean, I'll go back to Numbers, put it out. You're going to do libations or drink offering, as what they're called in the scripture. I know that's a few different questions, but that's because of what I heard as a response. And I really appreciate you ladies taking the time, you sisters taking the time to do this. My first question is exile. Was the children of Israel in exile in the wilderness, because that wasn't their promised land. And we got the law while we were in exile, pretty much in the wilderness for 40 years. So was no Torah properly done in the 40 years, because that could be considered exile. About the Shalomim or peace or Todah or thank you offering. That offering is not. It's not a sin offering. It's not a burnt offering. It's not an Olah offering. It's not a mincha or a meal offering. It's just pretty much saying thank you. So with that, I yield. Shalom to you ladies. Thank you for answering my questions. Shalom, Sal.
Shalom, sis. I appreciate you calling. Right? It's great. These are all great questions. We really miss having you on the panel to stimulate these kinds of conversations. So thank you for calling in. EMUNAH, you want to go ahead and address some of the concerns? I think I'll weigh in after you do.
I'll try to, as it relates to exile, the state of being barred from one's native country, typically for political or punitive reasons. So I would say, no, the children of Israel, when they come out of Mitzrayim, were not exiled because they had not yet entered into the promised land. The conversation of exile comes up after, when Moshe is telling them rightfully in the wilderness, listen, when you enter into the land which the Most High your power give you, ... So the conversation of exile could not have preceded this point, because the people as a nation, they went into Egypt 70 souls and came out a nation. And so that I would say no, it wasn't exile at that point. Secondly, as it relates to the Most High requiring sacrifice, there's a question that I would just submit for the audience to go back to Amos 5 and 25, read the whole chapter, and Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 7, when the Most High speaks to the children of Israel and say to them, when you was in the wilderness, did I require sacrifices of you? This is important, because when we're coming out of the wilderness after 40 years, there was a stop, if I'm not mistaken, at Gilgal, which is, circumcising your children, the male children on the 8th day is necessary. It's Torah, it's law, it's part of the covenant. But there was a larger body of males who were not circumcised. But once they began to come out and go into the land, these things had to be done. And so when we look at the laws, a lot of them speak about when you go into the land which the Most High, your power, give you. Now you're to do these things, or you're not to do these things. And so sacrifices and offerings were heavily regulated. The Most High told Yisrael, don't do it like you see the nations do it round about you. Don't do it anywhere you want to do. I'm going to regulate this. And I'll say one more thing as it relates to regulation, we see one of the kings who decided that, you know what, I hear the regulations, I hear what you say about Levi, but I'm a king. I want to give you something. And the Creator's like, that's strange fire. Get that out of here. He gets slapped with leprosy and can never enter the temple again. And so we do have situations and circumstances in the Tanakh, in the Torah, in the history that shows us that even though we may have a desire to do something, if it's out of order, it's out of order. One more situation is in the case of David, King David, bringing back inappropriately the Ark of the Covenant on an ox-driven cart, which is not how it was supposed to be carried around. It's supposed to have staves. The priests are supposed to carry it. He didn't do that. And the man that was with him with good intentions saw the ark falling and reached out to try and catch it. And ultimately, we know the story, he passed. And David was confused about this. What's going on here? So we see that the power that we are subscribing to, the power of the Torah, is one of order and decency. And so it doesn't supersede our desire and will to do and sacrifice and give how we want to, does not supersede what's already been left on record. And so I would say that I answered, hopefully, my thought processes on the first question as it relates to Ezra, and I will relinquish the mic for whoever wants to tackle the other questions.
For that, you did touch on, this is Mayana speaking, EMUNAH did touch on one of the things that I wanted to submit for consideration in terms of the condition of exile and what exile means. Typically, as when it's presented in Scripture, I really like that Sister Shanti was able to present one of the fellowship offering or the Torah offering, the thank you offering, that the people were permitted to do. Because one of the questions we asked is something that the lay could do. And what this is, though, and it differs from what Brother Divine is suggesting, is that it's not an offering where you're beseeching the Most High. When we had the conversation, beseeching the Most High for a thing, one of the things that we discussed on Tuesday was how vows operate, how vows function. In the video that demonstrated, mind you, the video is a demonstration video. It is, and anyone who's familiar with a demonstration understands that this is something that's meant to show the people how this thing is supposed to operate. And we're even giving a type of template prayer or demonstrative prayer of what you would do. And he even tells us what kind of things we can expect. And that's why we had the conversation of the vow. The Torah offering or the fellowship offering does not involve a vow. And so it's not, and the reason why that's important to think about is that a vow has several parts, and I'll just name the two that are relevant to this right now discussion, is that the person said, it's an if-then construction. If you do this thing, I will do that thing. And that's why we're being very careful about how this libation conversation is happening. The Torah offering is not a libation offering. That's one of the other distinctions. It's a bread offering, and it doesn't have anything to do with wine or water, although the bread does have oil, if I'm remembering this correctly. And it's inside of the bread or kneaded with the bread. It's not a separate free-flowing liquid. So this is not a liquid offering at all. It's a bread offering. And it's a fellowship or Torah offering. And there is no conversation of, Most High, if you do this thing, I will do that thing. Provide this, you're not petitioning the Most High for anything. You're not beseeching the Most High for anything. No vow is connected to this thing. There's no particular prayer or have you. Instead, this is something that you are participating with communally, and it is, as the sister said, it's a toda. And though, for those of you who know Hebrew, toda means thank you. Toda means thank you. And it's something that they're doing together, so it's a community kind of offering. And again, this is not something that you do one-on-one. And even the priests are involved here also. The priests are present. They're not somewhere in their prayer closet doing this thing. The priests are still part of this thing. And I think that's another part of this conversation that's missing, that in all of these spaces where something is being sanctioned, or something is being sanctioned and received by the Creator, the priests whom He has set apart and consecrated are present. They're doing this thing. And we had some examples. There were examples where kings are talking and allowing for or requesting someone to do something. And there's no reason to believe that this is a layman who is being asked to participate in these rituals. The king, who isn't doing it himself, is requesting that this thing be done. And whether or not this is sanctioned was not really examined, but it is examined that the king isn't even doing it himself. And as EMUNAH is saying, that when the king does try to put himself in the stead of the priest, it doesn't work out well. When Dawid is saying, let's move the ark around, even with the best of intention, the person who was not supposed to touch the ark, because the Most High said certain things happen in certain ways, and if it's not done this way, there are consequences. And it's not because of any other reason than the Most High set an order. What is the point of creating a priesthood if he's going to defunct, if they are going to be like everyone else? Correct me if I'm wrong, EMUNAH, but didn't the Levites have to present, the Levites did something first, and the Most High said, yeah, those are my people. I'm going to consecrate this particular set of people because they demonstrated when I needed them to. And then even among these set-apart people, there's still a smaller sect of set-apart people. The Most High puts these type of things in order for a reason. And then to later say that this is the space and this is the act that we want to recreate, but then we bring in something else. It's like mixing puzzle pieces. I think we've made that analogy before, trying to put pieces from one puzzle into another puzzle to create the picture that we want to see, even though it's not the picture that puzzle is supposed to make. I don't want to lose people in too many analogies. I'm a writer, so forgive me. But to not lose us any further, reminding the audience, and again, thank you very much, Ashanti, for calling in and keeping the conversation going. Shika, you've been listening to the conversation so far. Do you have any thoughts about where this conversation is going? What are your thoughts about libations and offerings and whatever role? What is your position on? Do we look at? Is for you? Okay, I'll start this way. For you, is there any kind of complication with using a AD mentality or CE mentality? For me, it's CE. For most people, it's AD mentality to explain a pre-exilic concept. Does that somehow complicate the theory?
I think it does, depending on what side of the Messianic divide you're on, and that's what I heard as I heard you guys talk about it. Of course, those who are Messianic believe that Christ was the fulfillment of scriptures from pre-exilic times. So therefore, what we're receiving, we believe that it is an activation of fulfillment coming from that time, and therefore can be applied. Now, as far as where my stance is that I do believe that we do have to look at those things, and we have to examine them, and we do have to have a serious conversation that you guys had. But we need to find out how to do these things, in a way that honors the Most High. Because the scripture says, return to me and I'll return to you. Mm-hmm. Well, where are we? What prescription would it be to return to him, or when can we? What should we use to return to him? Is it just one thing, such as the feast, or is it getting back to the libations and all the customs that we had pre-exilic? Also, I think Ron sense, from what I gather, is to put a divide or a separation between pre-exilic and Second Temple Judaism, because there is some belief that there was corruption at that point, and also belief that we were not a part of, I would say, that point of history, that we had already fled, left, went into Africa, I believe some in Americas, and so therefore, what customs were we doing? What customs were we performing that were keeping us connected to the Most High, and therefore in some sort of peace and power? I'll say that. And so that I think is the goal. But as far as collapsing the time, I think the Messianic divide is the difference. As far as purification, we're purified through our baptism. So therefore, we don't have a constant need to dip in mikvah and be cleansed, So therefore, those understandings or those requirements that we look at in Old Testament have been reconciled with New Testament beliefs of being of the order of Melchizedek, being priest and king after his righteousness. So I think, I see the Messianic divide here, but we need to figure out how we reconcile that and start returning to him, and in what manner and what prescription.
Excellent.
I deal with that.
That was an excellent contribution to the conversation, because I think that does shed light on some of the ways that there may be a disconnect. Specifically, when the language is being used of pre-exilic, it puts many people in the mindset of, okay, that's the time that we're dealing with. But if it is presented by someone that is working on a totally different timeline that extends actually beyond the stated era, I think it would be completely fair. Bond is saying that he was working back.
Yeah, you actually kind of break.
He's working back. He's
Yeah,
not the space that he's telling us, but he is just starting in that space. He's arising to that space from another time period that don't access that these certain types of changes or certain types.
Brother Sal, can you hear Sister Mariana?
Can you hear me?
No, is the phone breaking up?
Yeah, it's breaking up.
Who's speaking?
We couldn't hear you, Sister Mariana. Your phone started breaking up.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes, better now.
Better now. Yeah.
Okay, who? I feel like there's someone else on the line. Is there a male voice coming through other than yours, Sal?
Not me. I was trying to tell you the phone line was breaking up. That was me.
Oh, okay. You sounded a little... Okay, so we better now?
It's good now.
Yep.
It's good now.
Okay, great. So it's my understanding that I'll just repeat what I said later on in the conversation, because it's my understanding that we have a social media question, we have a caller, and we have a prepared statement from Sister Only Love, who was unable to join us. So I think I want to begin with talking to my audience. I would like to listen to our caller. Please let that caller in.
Shalom, family. How are you?
Shalom. Welcome to the conversation. Please state your name for the audience.
This is Esther Brown.
Hey, sis. How are you?
Shalom to all of my sisters on the panel. Hello, my sisters. How are you? Shalom to Sal, and shalom to the sister that called in, because I recognize her voice, and I know she's on your panel also.
Yes, that was Sister Ashanti.
Well, shalom, Sister Ashanti. I just wanted to say, wow. Everything that I was going to say, you sisters covered it. So I just have this one thing to say. In regards to who is performing the offering. Now, as I understand it, because I am connected to Africa and I will be going to Africa at the ending of this year, there is only a particular set group of people that are allowed to even do the offering. And so I'm a little bit confused, and I feel that we're kind of entering into dangerous territory if we think that just anybody and everybody can do an offering in regards to what you were talking about Tuesday on the show. Because, like I said, as I understand, not everybody can do that. You are a part of a chosen set. You are trained in this. You are trained in it the right way. And it's also, too, I feel that it's not only an act that we perform physically, but it is also, too, a matter of the heart. And we know that it's a matter of the heart because if it wasn't, then there would not have been Levite priests who died as a result of doing it. Because they did the actions, but there was something else that was going on with them that caused them to die. I feel that in America, we're on dangerous territory if we feel that any and everybody can go out and do this. And I want to say this. I love my Hebrew family, and I love and I respect with great honor all of my elders who are leaders in the community. But no one is above correction. And I feel I must make that known because I have to be honest here. I see some of the backlash that's going on social media, and it is not right, and we should not be talking about our family like this. And that's what I wanted to say. I love my sisters. I love my brother Ron Shields. I love Aquinte. But we have to do what Yah tells us to do. And that's what I wanted to say, sisters. So thank you so much. Hi, Amuna. I saw your yummy cottage thing video.
Oh, sister, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Okay, thank you, sisters, and have a good night.
Good, Lila Tove, thank you for your call. And absolutely, shout out to the Yummy Cottage. For those of you who don't know, Amuna has begun, she has successfully launched the Yummy Cottage. Thank you for all of those who have donated and all of those who will continue to donate to keep this Hebrew vegan restaurant operable. She's already has begun building her clientele, so if you live in the area, please feel free to reach out to Sister Amuna. She is feeding the people in more ways than one. What I want to do, because I think that both sisters, both the Sister Shika and Sister Esther, are making excellent points, and I think that this is an important, and I was being apparently, my line was breaking up when I was saying it. To be fair, Ron did say that he was working backwards, but he was not necessarily beginning in the pre-exilic text, but he was arriving to the pre-exilic text from this other post-New Testament Messiah space where it becomes acceptable for this whole new group of people to identify as priests. And if he begins in that area then and brings it back to the pre-exilic idea that he wants to be in, then that puts him in a completely different context than the ones that others might be looking at that don't see the timeline working in the same way. And so it does become a question of, and Shika's correct to say, that it does become a question of what side of the timeline of Messianic. It's very since there's a point of contention with who gets to use the word messianic, but whether or not you're on the New Testament side of this timeline, and what the thought brings with that, and whether or not you aren't, I guess. And so, to be fair, Ron did say that he was working from a particular point in time and then going backwards instead of from that point in time bringing all of us forward. So that's interesting. It's kind of, if you were to map it out, he starts somewhere in the middle, goes all the way to the past, and then leaps all the way into the future to bring us all together back into this pre-exilic idea. Very, very fascinating. We have a social media question. And the social media question is it okay to do any type of offerings contemporaneously? So in contemporary times. Is it okay to do it now? Which sounds kind of in the same vein as the question that Sister Ashanti presented to us. We do have another caller, so if we want to repeat maybe the answer in brief as to whether or not we are saying, are we reconsidering all types of offering, like all types of offering, or are we really just looking at libations? Is it okay to do any type of offering now? Ashika, what is your opinion? Is there any type of offerings that are okay? If libations are being contested, is there anything we can do?
I would say yes. I mean, from my understanding, other than sacrificial sin offering, purification offering, yes, everything else is still on the table. But again, the full examination, when, where, how, who, training, things of that nature all need to occur. So that's my answer.
Context is key. Great answer. Sister EMUNAH, what are your thoughts? Are there any type of offerings that are okay to do? Are we just snatching lollipops out of everybody's mouth and saying, listen, you can't have anything? Because we're the Grinch who stole Christmas. You can ask anybody else.
Not at all. If it is, I hold a position, and I often just stick to whatever the conversation is. If it is something that we're recreating that says don't add or take away, and you don't have the ability to get edification or understanding or clarity, then leave it alone. If you sit down and eat your fruit, you Baruch Hashem, you get a Most High thanks for food. You get a Most High thanks, you offering the praise of your lips every day, hopefully, several times throughout the day, for safe travels, for back and forth. The Most High, because when you look at the things we got exiled for, our foreparents, those things have not been fixed. When the Most High said, remember the orphan, remember the widow, if we want to do offering, if we want to show the Creator that we are ready to return, then we're supposed to turn around and show it to one another. And by that way, we're giving glory to the Creator. And so we're doing or going down, in my estimation, the same road our forefathers went down. We can be nasty to one another. We can not come to one another. We can hold grudges in our hearts. We can have indifference, but then we can still try to figure out, well, how I give you this thing and you accepted it. You see what I'm saying? Hopefully that answers the question that if we turn around and do that work, the harvest is plenteous, that work, the work that needs to be done, the internal work, so that our hearts will be pure, then prayerfully we can return so that we can give the offerings in the way in which they're prescribed. I relinquish the mic.
Okay, lest anyone say Mayana is hiding in the host seat, I'll answer that question as well. From my answer to that is the answer that I have to everything. When I'm looking at and examining anything, I go back to the question of, does it demonstrate fear? Is it keeping in a commandment? So I'm looking at, am I demonstrating the fear of the Most High? Has the Most High commanded this thing of me? And if the Most High hasn't commanded this thing of me, why am I approaching it? What am I doing it for? Is it because, and a lot of this, and the conversations that we've had, if we listen to some of these conversations about libation or about any of these other offering traditions and rituals that we're trying to reenact, it's because we want to feel like we're doing something. That just living appropriately, just doing what we're supposed to do, that's not as exciting, or it's not as demonstrative as we want it to be. Doing something like pouring a libation or or having the baptism rituals, or having these other types of big kind of shows of performances. That's what I'm looking for. And I have always anthropology. Performancing, the performance of righteousness. The performance is what we become very invested in. Things that we can see. Even look at how we look at our Passovers. We talk about Passover, and we understand it as a sacred and holy convocation, and we turn it into fashion shows. And in some cases, the Bachelorette episodes, Hebrew edition, and that's what we have done with our high holy days. It's how who can have the snazziest garment, who can burn out their bedazzle gun on Passover, and it becomes less about what it's supposed to be, that moment of reverence, that moment of we were delivered from Israel. The reason we are holding this Passover at all gets lost. And so my concern is, are we seduced by the idea of this libation ritual because it looks like something we can do? It's one of the other demonstrative things we can do. If it wasn't commanded of us, the conversation about is our heart right? That's what I heard from most of the callers in our panel. Is the heart right? Are we doing it for the Most High? Is it for Him? And again, the question for whether or not it's for Him is, did He ask for it? Did He ask for it? Or we give it? If you give me something I didn't ask for, it's not quite the same as doing what I asked you to do. And we, EMUNAH and I, because we're moms, we had a lot of really funny behind-the-scenes examples of the children doing one thing when we asked them to do something else. But, Mommy, you didn't like this? Like, yeah, that's great, but that's not what I told you to do. Right? And so I can imagine the Most High saying, I see you with your $25,000 bottle of wine. I'm pretty sure and I'm not impressed because I asked you to, like EMUNAH said, take care of the widow and the orphan, and you've blown all your money on your fancy smancy wine because you want to do a libation, right? And so there's this idea of not doing your homework and relying on extra credit to pass the class, as EMUNAH would say. I see that we have excited the phone lines. It's starting to jump quite a bit. I'm going to take these two callers if the panel is okay with that. Is the panel okay with me taking the next two callers?
She.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open up the phone lines for our two callers. We're already past the 9 o'clock hour. You see, time flies when you're with your people. It's 9:13 here in Brooklyn, and we have two callers on the line. After I speak with them, I will share a statement from our sister Only Love. For those of you who have followed our broadcast, the sister Only Love is a member of our Under the Palm family. She is currently live on location on the continent, and she has prepared a statement for us, or for you, and I'll read that to you in just a few moments. Sal, go ahead and open up the phone lines.
All right, 678, you're live.
Shalom, Queens. How you doing? It's Mario.
Shalom, Mario. Wouldn't be a UTP
I'm a first one
without
every time.
It wouldn't be a UTP episode without you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Queens?
Not bad, not bad. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. First, I have to do it before I even forget. Shout out to Malika, Danielle, my Isha. But, okay, so I have two things, though, because it was very interesting. But I want to kind of toss out a mind-boggler, I guess. Both of my questions are going to be mind-bogglers. Okay, so we on the whole idea that we're in exile or we're not in the land, quote-unquote, because a lot of us are, really a majority of us is in America or, scattered throughout. But my thing is, okay, well, we kind of seem to forget that we have a place already in Israel, which was set up by Ben Amin, called the EMUNAH. So my question is, well, if we're not allowed to sacrifice outside the land, which is very understandable, what about the people that are there? Are they still allowed to do like certain offerings or certain things, just the simple fact that they're in the land? Or do you feel that we all as a nation, have to be one gathered in that land specifically in order to prevent that? And then my second question is, if we go to Nehemiah 1, 8, and 9, I'll read it for you. Verse 8 will say, please remember what I told my servants. If you are unfaithful to me, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands and live by them, even though you're exiled to the ends of the earth, I will bring you back to the place of which I have chosen the name for you to honor. My question would be, do you feel that those commandments will include sacrificing, not sacrificing, or just offerings, keeping the laws and statutes, or are they a set of rules? Because the word is used, there is mitzvot. And I do know mitzvot, there's certain different other words, but mitzvot is just mainly dealing with commandments. But how would you take that as far as when he's saying, if you keep my commands, what will be included in all those commands in the sense of that we should do in order for him to actually bring us up out of exile, if you understand my question.
I do, and we have a list of commands. I would say that the commands that he's referring to are the ones that are on record. Whether or not those are, whether it's the longer of the list or the shorter, meaning just the 10 Commandments, deserve some inquiry. But you also stated that we tend to forget about Dimona. EMUNAH lived in Dimona or near about Dimona.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
We tend not to forget about Dimona. We don't forget about Dimona, and we don't forget about Africa because my panel has lived there. I study it. I mean, everybody knows Mayana lives in libraries. But this is why I surround myself with amazing women who have been to the spaces that I've only read about. And so, these are certified. By certified, I mean they have certificates that allow them to be spokespeople for certain places on the continent. So this is not just whimsical. We're claiming things we're not knowledgeable about. So Sister EMUNAH, because I tend to be the one that announces your accomplishments, would you like to speak on your experience in the land and answer the question, is it okay for them to do it?
Thank you for calling in, Brother Mario. I would say this. I would answer the question that you asked concerning if being in the land is sufficient. Mayana said earlier about having 10 pieces, but you actually only have 3. So being in the land is only one criteria of the list of criteria that is needed. The example I gave earlier was Hezekiah, so I'm going to read it. It's short. 2 Chronicles 30, starting at 1. Hezekiah sent word to all of Israel and Judah, and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple of the Most High, so they had the temple, in Jerusalem, they was in the land, and celebrate the Pesach to the Most High, the power of Israel. 2, the king and his officials and the whole assembly in Jerusalem decided to celebrate the Passover in the 2nd month. That's the law in the book of Leviticus. We can look if you're not prepared in the 2nd month. Pesach is the only feast that you can do as a makeup in the following month of the 14th of the month. It says, 3, they had not been able to celebrate it at the regular time because not enough priests, had consecrated themselves, and the people had not assembled in Jerusalem. So the people didn't come, and the priests weren't ready, and so they had to delay the Pesach. Even though they were in the land, even though they had the priesthood, even though they knew when the Pesach was, there was still a missing element, and our foreparents understood that enough to say, you know what, we're going to have to forego this. It says, the plan seemed right both to the king and the whole assembly. They decided to send a proclamation throughout Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling the people to come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Pesach to the Most High, the power of Israel. It had not been celebrated in large numbers according to what was written. And I'll stop there. I say that to say there's a lot in the text that can help to answer the question that you had. Hopefully that answers why, even if you are in the land, and I was amongst Dimona for over a month. I was there. I didn't just visit and run away. I was there. I watched everything, to what I could of what was going on. However, it would still be like the situation that we have here, where all of the elements are not there. And to be honest about that, and to even take a note from our foreparents who realized that. And in other spaces where, for instance, when the book of the law was found and they didn't know what to do with it, even though they had the priest, even though they had the king, even though they had the officials and the elders, they had to go to a prophetess, which was Huldah, to find out what to be done of this. And I think to a certain degree that's what's missing here. We think because we have the text, and we have the Strong's Concordance, and we have the Blue Letter Bible, well, we could just figure it out. And what is causing is more confusion. Our foreparents, oftentimes, when they didn't understand something, they beseeched the Creator in a way that it was lawful to beseech the Creator. So hopefully that answered the question. If not, I'll try to
Yes, I definitely did. Toda. I just wanted to get understanding about that. Toda, sis.
To the Mario for calling in. You're always welcome. Always welcome. Guess what? We have Malaka in the building. So before I go to the second caller, give me 1 more minute while I bring our Sister Malaka into the conversation. Sister Malaka, welcome. Greet the people. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. All praises to the Holy One of Israel. So glad I can be here with you guys tonight, and I do apologize for being late. I know that you know this, but I'll tell the people. I was on a prayer call, so I had to take care of praying with my sisters before I could come. So I don't want you to think I come to the table late and don't care. I come to the table late with a reason. So I'm glad to be here. I want to listen for a little bit so I can hear what we're talking about in fullness, and then I'll be ready to contribute.
Okay, don't go anywhere because it seems as if we may have lost that caller. If you're listening and you would like to call in, you're listening on Blog Talk or in some other space and you would like to call in and join the conversation, the number here is 319-527-6239, and you remember to press 1 so we can bring you into the conversation. Tonight we're discussing tell them why you're mad. And it sounds a little provocative, but it isn't. It's really about talking to one another, explaining to each other if we find something that gives us pause or brings concern. And it's not so much that we're necessarily mad, but it's just a phrase that for those of us who are a little bit older might ring some bells. Tell them why you're mad, son. Tell them why you're mad. The rest of this idea is that there tends to be a problem with even our ability to problem solve and come up with problem resolution in our community. So we're kind of teasing out one, the libation ritual that our brother Ron Divine Prospect has introduced or reintroduced to the people. And because it is such a unfamiliar topic, it has generated some buzz. And we actually spoke to him and to the concept on Tuesday. Again, we'll leave that link in the box for you if you want to check it out after you listen to our current broadcast and see what that conversation about libation was all about. So thank you for tuning in. Again, call that number 319-527-6239 and press 1 so that we can talk to you. So, Sister Malaka, you're just joining us. I know that you're fairly familiar with the topic. Do you have any thoughts that you want to share with us as it pertains to libation and its more recent reintroduction to the community?
Yes. I have to say I was a little concerned about the reintroduction of the giving of drink offerings, because it was my understanding through study that there was a specified place that drink offerings were poured, a specified time that drink offerings were made, and a specified person that poured the drink offering. And in addition to that, the thing that I was most having questions about is if you're not following the specifications of the drink offering, can you in fact say that you're making the drink offering to the Most High? If you're not following his specifications, then you're making a drink offering, but who are you making it to? So I was just, a little bit concerned about that because, as I read text, I see that the libation or the drink offering seemed to me to be more about the nation, the life of the nation. These offerings were most often poured at feast days, appointed feast times. And obviously, drink offering was poured in the covenant between Yaakov and the Most High, or even Abraham and the Most High. But I just didn't understand why we would introduce the pouring of drink offering as though this is something that anyone does anywhere, anytime. Because if that were the case, then I don't understand why the Most High would have been provoked to anger against the people when they were pouring them at any time, in any place, and anyone. So, those are just kind of some of my opening thoughts. I had questions.
Well, then you're like the rest of us. We had questions, too. But I know that you're coming in a little later into the conversation. So I want to give you an opportunity to share your thoughts about the revelation that we kind of had here, that Ron is not coming from the pre-exilic space that from and of course we're hoping he'll call in if we're misrepresenting him in any way. But the idea that we're working with now is that, and even by his own admission, he's working backwards through time, and not in any way, and not in any unremarkable way. Instead, what he's saying is that, and if the theory that Sister Shanti presented is correct, that because of the New Testament era, where the New Testament Messiah initiates the people into the priesthood, that priesthood, the nation of priests that was promised to us in the original Testament, gets established in this age of the New Testament Messiah. And so the idea that Ron or others are not priests becomes moot, because according to this New Testament understanding, a new initiation has occurred and everyone is now a priest. And so the concern of who gets to do it and when gets answered, as Sister Sheikah said, depending upon what side of the divide you are on. And if you come in from that time frame and then work backwards into the pre-exilic idea, then you get to walk into the pre-exilic idea as a priest, because you came from a time frame that initiated you there. So it's kind of a bit of time travel happening in order for this to work. And so in light of that time frame and that particular line of thinking, how does that affect the way that you're looking at that? I know that you adhere sincerely to these a lot of these New Testament thoughts as well. So for you, just hearing that, the idea that we become initiated as priests because of the New Testament promise, that changes our access to this pre-exilic idea, bringing it into 2018.
Well, I mean, for me, then, if I'm following that train of thought as that I am in the order of the priesthood of Melchizedek, then why am I pouring drink offerings at all? Because that's no longer necessary. In that priesthood, don't pour offerings. In that priesthood, you minister by the Spirit. You minister by the Ruach. You reach the Most High through the name of the HaMashiach, not through the gift of those type of offerings. So,
that was my understanding. That was my understanding as well, but I didn't want to be the one to forward it, because I know that the people are very sensitive to my perspective, because people have ideas about what I think, and so I wanted it to come from a source that they might consider pure than my own, and so I appreciate you giving that. I do want to read, and I thank the callers. I thank all of you for calling in and pressing 1. We have 3 callers, which I think is amazing, and I really, really, really want to get to you, but I don't want time to run out before I read a very short statement from Sister Only Love, who took the time to prepare a statement for you, the listening audience. I get to talk to her all the time, so this is great for me, but I really want to share her and her love for the people and her love for the research with all of you as well. And, of course, because I said that, I then lost it. Wait, I think, no, that's, I'm going to bring in the first caller while I queue up the statement again. Wait, I found it. Haha. Okay, the statement reads, it's actually a statement that I think you may be able to find on her website, Prophetic Whirlwind, Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny. You can go there by going to www.propheticwhirlwind.com. And her statement reads as follows. UTP panelist Only Love Chika Olsen is on the ground in Nigeria and Ghana, and libations there are not done casually and not done by everyone, only at appointed times and mostly by appointed people. Most Hebrews in Africa who are conscious of their Hebrew heritage do not pour libations at this point. Parenthetically, she adds, we also recognize millions of Hebrews in Africa who are not aware of their biblical lineage that may continue this practice, close parentheses. Some may pour libations, but it would be at a very special event or festival. Sister Only Love spoke to 3 Nigerian elders in Nigeria about libations and other rituals, such as sacrifice, and the elders there were from 2 different tribes, and the current pouring of libations was discouraged. This is not to say that every Hebrew in Africa who is conscious of his or her heritage no longer pours libations. But after 3 trips to 3 West African nations, most of the congregations she visited no longer pour libations, and most of the congregations, the tense is changing, so forgive me as I call it. I'm not saying I, but I'm speaking as I, as Only Love. And most of the congregations I visited in Africa are independent of white Jews. I have been to 10 states in Nigeria and multiple regions in Ghana and Togo, am I pronouncing that, or Togo? For more information on my trips, people are encouraged to visit www.propheticworldwind.com. My comments are not to belittle the work or scholarship of anyone, but to share some of what I'm learning in Africa, as I have a deep love for Africa and wrote about libations as a Hebrew custom brought into Africa in my forthcoming book. I discovered through my own research years ago that libation was a version of the biblical drink offering, and I have been studying Hebrews in Africa since 2012. I have been a Pan-Africanist my entire life, and I hold roles in Nigerian Hebrew organizations and Ghanaian government-affiliated Pan-African organizations. In all we do, the elder should be consulted, and not just one elder, but many. Shalom. So I want to reemphasize for the listening audience that this message from Sister Only Love is a message of love, and it's a message of respect, and that she wanted me to make sure that I emphasize for all of you that this contribution in no way is intended to belittle anyone else's research or wherever they are in their understanding or their journey, but rather to share what her many, many years working with officials in Nigeria and in Ghana and in Africa has yielded, and to share that with you specifically for this conversation of libations. So we do have the callers. I'm going to take the next caller. So I'll go ahead and open up the phone line.
Shalom, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, this is Esther Brown, and I'm back again. Because as Malaka was speaking, I just something just popped up in my head. Because I do believe in Messiah, okay? And but this is what I wanted to say. As Malaka was speaking, I thought to myself, if we were still able to pour drink offerings unto Yah, the apostles, and I'm still learning, so bear with me, the apostles would have been doing it also. We would have a record of the apostles doing it. We would have a record of the First Assembly doing it. And there's no record of it that I know about. Now, if I'm wrong, I can receive correction. But I don't see the apostles or the First Assembly doing that. And there's a reason why. And they knew Messiah. They walked with Messiah. They talked with Messiah. And they're not doing that. And that's just what I want to say. Thank you again, Sal, for letting me in on the call. Thank you, sisters, for hearing me out. And thank you to the viewing audience. I love my Hebrew family, and I want it to be known. I love you. I respect our elders. I honor our elders. But Yah is not to be played with. And believe me, if you do it, you better make sure it's correct. You better make sure it's right, because you are going to receive a response. Now, are you going to get a good one, or are you going to get a bad one? And if you get rejected, are you prepared for that? Because then it will be a condition of your heart, not your actions, but your heart. Thank you, family. Shalom.
Twitter for calling in again, Sister Esther. Always a pleasure indeed. I just got notified that one of our callers was in the queue and got disconnected. So prayerfully he'll call back, and we'll get to hear from one of the brothers that did listen to one of our previous shows, and we did have an opportunity. EMUNAH and I did have an opportunity to speak with him and get some of his opinions. I really hope that he'll be able to get through on the phone line. So prayerfully he'll call back, and you'll get to hear from him too. Exciting. So now that you've heard the conversation that we had with Sis Only Love, or the statement that Sis Only Love shared, I'm going to turn it back over to the panel and get some of their thoughts about, what's really good with the apostles not being on record having done any of these libations, even though the priesthood of Melech Zadok was ushered in by according to this particular thought. Both Sister Angela and Sister Esther raised very good questions. Is there any record of the apostles participating in libations? Would they not have been the ones to spearhead the resurrection of this pre-exilic custom if it was something we were expected to do? Are these instructions listed in any of the letters? Paul is doing a great deal of instruction because we understand that Paul is the apostle to the being newly initiated, or having been reinitiated, having there being this disconnect from a Torah understanding. And so Paul and the apostles and the Messiah of the New Testament are tasked with bringing everyone back into the fold. Is there any record of them including this as one of the things they need to do, or does the order of Melech Zadok necessarily preclude the need for reinstating this custom, as has been asserted by Sister Malaka? For those of you who are listening and you're wondering, what are they talking about? This doesn't sound like the regular UTP stuff. The girls are usually talking about something a little bit different. We're talking about today are customs. Specifically, we're looking at libations and whether or not that specific custom should be reinstituted, and all of the many moving pieces surrounding and organized around that conversation. Does the New Testament mindset, or the New Testament, I don't want to say anything inappropriate, the New Testament understanding, does that put a different light on how we understand and how we accept the reintroduction of libations, or does even that not necessarily give us the kind of insight that we would need to fully understand or fully get behind reinstituting libations in this contemporary point of 2018 that we find ourselves in now? If you want to weigh in on that conversation, call into 319-527-6239, and don't forget to press 1. Right now the phone lines are open, so you get to slide right in to the first position on the queue, and I'll take your call right away. Sister EMUNAH, I'll bring you back into the conversation. So we've heard a lot over the last hour or so, going into the second hour. We're at 9:40 now. We've heard a lot. There's a lot about the priesthood of Melech Zadok. There's a lot about the pre-exilic priesthood. There's a lot of questions about all of the number of offerings that come bundled with this idea of libation. It's not just libations. If we upset libations, do we flip over the entire apple cart and now we can't tap anything? There does seem to be a bit of discomfort out there in Radio Land about being uncomfortable with we don't have access to a lot of the things that our ancestors did. Do we need to just kind of reconcile with that discomfort, or is there room to say, let me have something?
All right, Sister Miranda, come again with the latter part of the question.
Well, with us taking to task this idea of libations not necessarily being a good fit for 2018, and certainly not for everyone in 2018, do we need to just get comfortable with it, with our discomfort? Because clearly people are becoming uncomfortable with the idea that we can't do libations, and if we can't do libations, we can't do anything. And so people are becoming a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of we might be snatching more than just one lollipop out of the candy tin. So what are your thoughts about that? That we're hearing about the priesthood of Melek Zadok, that somehow maybe that offers a way in that isn't being considered. What are your thoughts about some of the theories we have being presented and suggested around this conversation?
I would say there are many things that we can do that we are not doing, that is required of us to do, and we can do them without compromising. We can do them without, everything that's going on. So, again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, that it's not, if we're looking to do busy work, then yes, it feels like something is being taken away. But if we're looking to actually do work, if we're looking to do the soul work that takes to return to our true living power, if we're looking to look at why our foreparents got kicked out continually, what caused them to slip off into idolatry continually, what caused them to turn their back on the Creator continually, and work on those things within us, and do the things that is required. There are things that are morally, spiritually required of us as people. It's on record. And this is the work that we should be doing so that we can be acceptable. The physical things are just a manifestation of that which is spiritual. And if you haven't done the soul work, your physical manifestation is polluted. So if the mind is just concentrated on, I got to see this, then yes, you might feel that way. But on the journey that I have been on for umpteen years, in the interactions that I've come across people for all of this time, the continual growth, because the growth doesn't stop, it's continual. No, there isn't a lack of things to do. If anybody is on social media at any time, there isn't a lack of someone in need. There isn't a lack of someone who's hurt. There isn't a lack of someone who you can be their answered prayer. When they send their prayer, the Most High says, if you close your ears to the poor, the cry of the poor, even your prayers are an abomination, right? So we have people amongst us who are crying onto the Most High, and you are the answer. You see? And in this way we can show that, listen, Most High, we are sorry. Salak Lanu. When we go to the book, for those who subscribe, when we go to the book of Tobit, and when we go, that's in the Apocrypha, they were in exile. And what is Tobit doing? Alms. He's out there burying the dead. You see what I'm saying? He's doing alms. Even though he's remembering the feast, and he said he would go up many times a year, and he was the only one of his brethren who would go up. He was remembering, but what was he doing to show the Most High, listen, I'm not complacent. I don't feel well. I want to show you, please forgive me and help me to return. He was doing that which is required of us. So I don't know how many times I could say it, because there is way too much work to be doing for us to be tripping over or setting back or putting back into our path. For instance, we have people who are saying the Shabbat is half a day, 12 hours. We have doctrines out there that's having people to say you don't even need to keep the Shabbat. You understand what I'm saying? So if we're going to talk about all the things that's taken away from us, let's talk about all the things that we are choosing to take away from ourselves because our hearts are still unrepentant, because we have not circumcised, therefore, the foreskin of our hearts, because we still do want to do what we want to do and then present it as, Most High, is what you asked me for. We're coming back after all this time with the same mentality. This is what you asked me for. It's not what the Creator asked us for, and we know it. I'm gonna step down. I'm gonna somebody, because then I'm gonna go left field. So I'm gonna go. Hopefully that answers the question, Sister Mariana. If not, I'll expound a little more. But I'll relinquish the mic.
No. It looks like you want to make sure we go out with a bang. For those of you who don't know, we're in the last week of the regular season of Debate Talk for You, and so this is actually only a special edition, and this week is our last week. And it looks like EMUNAH is going to make sure you remember us for a long time. Hallelujah. Okay, so sisters, what do you guys think of? What do you ladies think about the basic idea that we're looking for extra credit? We're so busy concerned about the extra credit that we're not doing our homework. Sister Malaka, Sister Malaka, how do you feel? You can build on EMUNAH's petition that maybe we should just do our homework and not worry about the extra credit right now. Or you can introduce your own.
No, I definitely can speak to what Sister EMUNAH was saying, because this is exactly what I received as far as prayer today, like what it was that I wanted to share with the prayer call and how we prayed. And I'm going to tell you how we prayed was right out of Isaiah 58. Where Yah speaking to his people saying, I don't even enjoy your feast days because you're not doing things that I asked you to do. Remove the yoke of oppression out of your midst. That's that soul work Sister is talking about. Learn how to stop oppressing each other. Stop doing that. Stop pointing the accusatory finger. Like stop speaking harsh judgment against each other. Stop. He said stop speaking vanity. Stop arguing foolishly. And then he says, what I want you to do is I want you to steal your bread to the hungry. Do that. Steal your bread to the hungry. Cover the naked. He said, draw to yourself the afflicted soul. The downtrodden, the discouraged, the depressed. He said, that we needed to open our homes to the people who didn't have a place to stay. And if we do those things, then he will cause our light to rise. He said he'll cause us to be moved out of obscurity and that his glory would be upon us. He said that if we do those things, we would be praying. And as we pray, we would call to him and he would say, here I am, while we're calling to him. We are not doing those things. I sometimes I hear, Hebrews, they'll tell me I'm super spiritual. I still got the church in me or whatever. I've had that said to me many times. And whatever people think about me one way or the other, what I will say is I believe in the power of prayer. And I believe in the Ruach HaKodesh leading his people and Yah sending his Ruach to lead us into truth. And so, if we're looking for a way to please him, if we're looking for an offering to give him, if we're looking for something to pour out, the only time I remember ever seeing a drink offering being mentioned in the New Testament is the Apostle Paul speaking in, I think it's Philippians, the 2nd chapter, and he says, if I must be poured out like a drink offering unto the Most High, then I will do that. So he was talking about pouring himself out in his act of worship and obedience to the Most High in completing the calling upon his life. He wasn't talking about pouring a libation on a tree. So that, I would have to agree with Sister EMUNAH that let's do first things first. Let's do what he asked us to do, because he gave us a whole bunch of promises of things that he would do if we did what he asked us to do. And I have other things I could say, but I'm going to yield and let someone else speak.
Well, all right. Sister Malaka bring a little bit of heat there all the way from the New Testament. Hallelujah. We're coming down to the last 10 minutes of the regular scheduled program before we go into the overtime portion of the show. We do have one caller on the line right now. Chika, do you want to speak now, or should we let the caller in?
Let the caller in, and then I'll go ahead after.
Hallelujah. Okay, so I'll open up the phone line, please.
Hello? Shalom. It's me again, Mario.
Welcome back. Welcome
Hi,
back.
How you doing? Okay, and this was touching on a great point. I just made a video yesterday speaking of exactly what she was getting at. I shared it to the page on Facebook, so hopefully y'all got to see it. If not, please check it out. I was in a little rant, but I was very angry at Israel because I do see the division. I mean, especially with the whole Messianic, non-Messianic debate, Torah, non-Torah debate. I I am going to be on the podcast tomorrow, which is ironically called, Offenders of the New Testament. But I do see it. Like, I mean, it's kind of, a headache, we causing so much division amongst ourselves that we can't even get together and build or whatsoever. We can't put our differences aside and try to get back. And, I was talking to a queen not too long ago, on a post, and she automatically, as soon as a guy, and I made a post saying, if somebody believes in Yahshua, let them believe in Yahshua. If that's what's going to keep them peace, let them believe in that. And if they're Torah only, let them believe in that. Whatever keeps people, or whatever brings people's peace, let them have it, and allow the Most High to do His own will. Let him sort out how He wants to sort out. Let Him, bring on. We need to get our household in order first. We need to, and I'm gonna take a quote from the New Testament. Even though I'm not into the New Testament, I do get with a lot of philosophies. You got to clean out the inside before you worry about the outside. And if we're supposed to be a light to the nation, we got to be. We can't be a light to the nation if we're just constantly being dark. I mean, how that light and dark don't mix. We see that in the beginning. He clearly, that was the first thing that He did, was separate light from darkness. And if we're gonna try to build and we're gonna try to be a light to the nation or to the nations, we need to come together as a whole or as a nation and kind of put our separate differences aside. Where there is a lot of doctrines out there that that it is causing division or whatsoever. Like Sis was saying, some people are keeping halfway Shabbat. Some people are keeping or not even keeping Shabbat. For me, I don't even keep Shabbat on Saturday. I follow the lunar Shabbat. But am I forcing that on somebody? No, that's just for me and my household. I feel that, I feel more connected. And even with these feast days, we have to remember, if we read Jeremiah was very passionate about what, you can hear the anger. And Jeremiah, you can hear the anger that the Most High had through Jeremiah's writing, and how upset he was. In Jeremiah 7 is one of my favorite book chapters out of the whole chapter. And when he goes to the temple and he says, they come here saying that this is Yah's temple, but everything that they're doing is for fame. Everything that they're doing. I didn't tell you to do this. I didn't tell you to do this. All I did was tell you to keep my laws, statutes, and commandments. But y'all went backwards. And I can see that today. We are continually going backwards trying to issue out certain doctrines because, you got one person who's in their feelings trying to be on top or wanting to be this, wanting to be, and then not only that, they're giving themselves certain titles or they're self-proclaiming certain things. Like you got people who call, oh, I'm general this or I'm high priest this or I'm chief prince this or something like that. And all of that is not even necessary because at the end of the day, we all are supposed to be on equal plane. All of Israel as a whole is supposed to be on one. We're supposed to be as one nation under as a royal priest. So everybody's supposed to be a high priest. Everybody's supposed to be a king, or a queen or whatsoever. But we're not even participating. We're not even pushing that. We're pushing like, okay, well, I'm over this person or I'm over that person and stuff like that. No, we
Brother
all.
Mario, let me interrupt you for one moment, just to remind the listening audience that we are coming on the 10 o'clock hour, and if you haven't already pressed 1, or if you're still listening to us on Blog Talk Radio, you're going to have to call in 319-527-6239 and press 1 to join the conversation. In 5 minutes, we will no longer be streaming live, and you will have to be on the phone in order to hear us as we go into the overtime portion of the show. Thank you, Brother Mario, for allowing me to give that quick announcement, and thank you so much for what you've said so far. Obviously, you can continue sharing your thought. I appreciate you allowing me to share that with the people.
No, that was very important. So I had to shut up for that. But, yeah, and one thing I do respect about Ron the Bible, I have mad respect for him, is that even though he is New Testament, I see that he also goes around. He's not just sitting here pushing, oh, well, I'm New Testament or I'm Messianic, so you got to do this, you got to do this. No, he's actually trying to ask, and though I'm not, or I'm Torah only, I'm doing air quotes, Torah only, I do see he'll come into a Torah only community, or he can come into and I see him plenty of times come into a Torah-only congregation and teach, and present certain arguments that people can relate to. And that's what we have to do as a nation. We have to find these bridges. We have to find these gaps that divide us. We've been divided for so long, and we went into captivity because we were divided. We were divided back. That's the whole reason why we had a northern and southern kingdom, because we was arguing over the legitimacy of who's supposed to be king. And the simple fact that we was arguing over that, the northern kingdom ended up joining with the Assyrians, with Syria, and forming a whole other nation just to come onto the southern kingdom, just to attack their brothers in the southern kingdom, and that caused division. So I'm 100% like, okay, like tomorrow after that, I'm willing to build with any New Testament, any non-New Testament, and if I get flack for that, I don't care or anything like that, because I am tired of the division. I am like,
Amari, I'm gonna let you go ahead and let you sit on the panel with us. Let you make comfortable. And but you said a lot of really, really great points, and I want to give the panel an opportunity to address them, because yes, there are a lot of things that contributed to our split, a lot of things that contributed to our exile, and also I don't want the second part of our title to get too lost. We're looking also at the problems with problem resolution. Whether or not, like you said, we can talk to each other. Can we even, instead of looking at more things for us to be divided over, those things that we have in common, those which are normally the commandments that the Most High gave us, all of these other fringe ideas and all these other fringe customs and rituals, I think that there's room for us to go back to that later. But stay on the line, have a seat, hang out with us a bit. We're gonna bring Shika back into the conversation. She's been waiting very patiently, and I'm sure she's been listening very closely to all of the things that you shared. So let's get her thoughts on some of the things she's been listening to. We're already at the 11. Well, it's 9:58. It's 9:58 here in Brooklyn, so we're almost at the 10 o'clock hour. Shika, what are your thoughts on what you have heard so far?
Well, my thoughts on getting our spirits right and operating in the right spirit is, of course, one of the messages I think I pushed a lot. Just today I posted up a post, and it was a parallel, how our ancestors utilized the sacrificial system in the same way that we have, I won't say it, but others using the grace card, just maxing it out. Like, let's just, I messed up. Let me go ahead and, kill this turtle dove or whatever it is. And so when we talk about doing things in the right spirit, that definitely has to be the case no matter what you're doing, whether you're implementing sacrifices or whether you are offering the sacrifices of your heart and a broken heart and spirit. And so I first wanted to say that. My second thing, and this is something that I asked people, or I had this question one time, is what did Yah give us first? Did he give us the work first or the understanding? And I think initially he just gave you do's and don'ts. Do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. And then the understanding was brought out more and more as the writings continue. And so the question was, the issue was, is faith without works dead? Well, faith without works is definitely dead. So you have to have both. They don't stand alone. And so can you work onto faith? Yes, you can. You can work onto faith, because you can actually be told to do something and then later see the meaning. And you can have an understanding of something and then manifest the work. And so therefore, I don't see it as we're getting caught up in the work. Perhaps somebody needs to do the work before they see the meaning. Some people are doers when they learn. Some people are audio learners. And so, therefore, it suffices all types of learning when we are putting an emphasis on both. And I think we can do both. We can walk and chew gum at the same time if we understand that any work that manifests is not acceptable to Yah if your heart is not. So that was my take on that, and I'll yield the mic.
Thank you so much for that. That was the voice of our newest edition, Sheikah, and we appreciate you being here. We do have a caller who managed to sneak in right before the 10 o'clock hour. Hallelujah. We have a caller waiting on the line, so I'll go ahead and bring that person in.
470, you're live.
Shalom, shalom. Hey, this is Kyle. How y'all doing this afternoon?
Hey, Kaya, you made it, Aki. Welcome.
I made it. Well, yeah, I was listening in earlier, and I kind of want to just chime in. I know a lot of people are, I guess, confused or, I guess, thrown back by the whole pre-exilic thing that a lot of people are talking about. And I think a lot of people have a misconception of what Ron is actually saying, or that me personally, I'm actually conveying. What I'm actually saying is that when we actually retrace our steps and we go back to, this is a way that we can find the connection in Africa, and we can show that these people are the northern tribes. And I think Rabbi Akwete, and I believe I pronounced his name correctly, but and also Ron specifically said that it's not for everybody to do, and it has to be a system where you have to be taught and learn. And we're not suggesting that everybody go out there tomorrow and start pouring libations and casting lots or anything, but we're just showing that these things are evident in West Africa today, so that we can have that connection with West Africa. And I think that kind of got misconstrued and ran out of proportion. And it's not like we're saying everyone must do this tomorrow. That's not the point that we're making. The point is simply a connection to the people who still exist in that land, to show that they're still practicing these pre-exilic traditions and customs that we see in the Torah.
Well, thank you for that, because that does help kind of round out and flesh out what Ron may be trying to do. I have a question for you. Because this was put on YouTube, and as you know, YouTube is, everyone has access to it. What about those people that are watching and looking and seeing that this is being demonstrated and saying, I want to do that too, and that they're doing these things? They're not being trained. They don't understand anything about a connection to Africa. What they are receiving is, this is something that a respected researcher in the community is saying I can do, and they're doing it. What about that? Is there any obligation or accountability to that soul that is engaging in something?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Anything that a public figure puts out, and I mean, I cannot speak on behalf of Ron or Divine Prophet, whatever you know him as. I can't speak on his behalf, but I can speak knowing him, as a friend, because we actually go to the same congregation and we worship, we hang out together. So, I mean, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what his message was. And on that specific video that's mentioned where he's actually pouring a libation, he actually specifically says that you need to be taught how to pour a libation. This is not something that he's showing the customs. He's making a connection back to West Africa, and he's showing the people these are specifically the traditions of our people, and these specific traditions are still being done by the people who claim and have been historically and genetically proven to be the northern tribes of Israel. And that pretty much is the extent of his argument. And he says that his methodology is to travel backwards and to go backwards in the time and to go back to that Edenic state. And I believe that is his overall goal. That's my overall goal in my studies. I want to go backwards. I want to figure out what the Zoroastrian influence were to the post-exilic or Second Temple Judaism, and those things that a lot of people are overlooking in their studies. And then we look at these texts as if they are infallible, but we don't look at the influences of outside or those captivities that our people were definitely into, and those things that came into our community and our culture that we now think are natural, but they're definitely changed based on the influence of those outside influences.
Those are excellent points. And with the point you just made about looking at the ancestors and looking at the records as if the ancestors were infallible, doesn't that also apply to the ancestors that may have been participating in some of these pre-exilic rituals, and also to the Hebrews that are on the continent. Like you said, they were trying to make these connections. Isn't it important what type of connections we make? Do we want to make connections to those practices that may very well still exist among our Hebrews on the continent, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should exist? We actually had a statement. I don't know if you were able to hear it. I know that you were very, very busy at a point, but we had a statement that came from Sister Only Love. I don't know if you were familiar with our panel, but we have EMUNAH, who I know you know lived in Ethiopia, and we have Sister Only Love, who is currently live on location in Ghana, between Ghana and Nigeria, and she's gone to 3 different places in West Africa. And she shared a statement with us that confirms that although libations are practiced, they're discouraged because these Hebrews in West Africa do not consider this as something that they should continue to do. So this we tend to talk about Africa as if it's one block, but it isn't. And Hebrews in different spaces have apparently different connections to this idea of the pre-exilic ritual of libation. So I want to give you an opportunity to speak to that, and I want to give the panel an opportunity to engage you while we have you. Once again, it's a privilege to have you here. I know that you're very close to Brother Divine Prospect, Brother Ron Shields, and so thank you very much for calling in. So can you stay with us and maybe listen to what the panel has to say about what you shared with us, brother?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we actually look at libations in the scripture, it's never ever it actually tells you how to pour a libation. It specifies how you pour it, but it is never ever a commandment that you should do. But at the same time, it tells you how to pour it, and it also tells you that you should not pour them to other deities and other gods. That's what is the negative part of it. And so when you're dealing with libations in West Africa, a lot of those, those tribes there in West Africa, and I use that term loosely, they are actually been heavily influenced by Judaism. And so they're taking them outside of their natural customs and traditions, and they're converting them through European sources to Judaism. And you see that highly with the Limba and also with the Igbo people. They specifically have white Jews going there and teaching them how to be themselves. And that makes no sense to me. And so they're forgetting about these customs, and they're forgetting about these customs that they practiced for a millennia, and they're converting back to who they originally are, but through a different source. And I feel that we have that same influence here in America because a lot of the things that we feel are looked at in a negative light are purely through the lenses of Judaism, not through Hebraic culture.
Because you brought that up, I want to read a sentence in the prepared statement that Only Love Chica Austin forwarded to us. And the sentence reads, "This is not to say every single Hebrew in Africa who is conscious of his or her heritage no longer pours libations, but after 3 trips to 3 West African nations, most of the congregations I visited no longer pour libations, and most of the congregations I visited in Africa are independent of white Jews," meaning that all of those spaces have not had contact with the Jews or Judaism as you are supposing in that statement. So speaking specifically to the people that Sister Only Love was presenting to us as evidence that they have moved away from and have begun to discourage the pouring of libation, she is making a point to say that in these 3 West African nations that they have had no influence at all with Judaism or white Jews or even white Christians and the like, and this is just something that they understand to be the case because of their own oral traditions. And I just wanted to, because I think that you weren't online when I read the whole thing, but that sentence speaks to your concern, and I would want to say that I can see that that's probably true of some people, maybe even the Limba people that you're mentioning, but obviously not of the people that she's talking about. Stay with us. I want the panel to have the honor and the opportunity to speak to you, like I get to speak to you, and the other brothers that I got to meet today. So, Shika, Malaka, Emuna, you got to speak to Brother Kyle in some ways also earlier today. So, what do you think about the clarification that Brother Kyle has brought to the conversation? And again, thank you for that clarification that this is not for everybody. The points that I brought up are what about accountability? And this idea that, it's happening in Africa and we're trying to connect to the Hebrews on the continent, kind of bridging the gap between the diasporas. Ladies, I don't even want to call names. Whoever has something to say, feel free to chime in.
Okay, yeah, this is Shika. Go ahead, Emuna.
Shalom. How you doing?
Shalom, Brother Kyle. How are you?
Well.
James, lady, so he knows who he's talking to.
This is Emuna. I'll be short. Some of the things that I shared earlier today, and I'll share it here, is that when we're looking at exile, which is not a good thing, like looking at the disease is like looking at something that's malfunctioning. If we're going to start at the end and we work our way backwards, as it was said in another space, reverse engineer, we have to be honest about where every people group that is subscribing and saying that they're Hebrews are. So whether you're in West Africa, you're in East Africa, you're in South Africa, you're in America, you're in the Caribbean, you're in exile. So, therefore, we have to be honest about what are the things that we were doing before we got to this part. So sometimes we're looking back, yes, and saying, oh, yeah, our ancestors are doing this thing, but then is the thing good or is it not good? And that's kind of why we're having the conversation, because not because you have been doing something for millennia means that it's good. Because if it was good, then the laws that are left on record says the Most High will remember us and return us to the land that He promised. So if that has not happening and is not happening, it's like a mechanic going in there, you paying all this money, and your car is still not starting. And you've been going to the same mechanic every day. 1 month later, you're going to say, wait a minute, this car is supposed to be starting. What's going on? And so that's my objection. When I went to Ethiopia, I didn't go to West Africa. I went to Ethiopia, and to a certain degree, they're looking to us the same way we're looking to them. And that's just the honest truth of it. Only Love is over there because on the continent, somebody is looking to hear what Only Love has to say, and Only Love is coming from the West. When we arrive, they say, my brother, my sister, where have you been? So we want to be honest that this is not just a one-way conversation, and not everything that they have and have been holding on to necessarily serves them in the long run. And it's for all of us to begin to put our differences aside, put our feelings and all of that to the side, and objectively look at the things that we are telling one another subscribe to. Because there is Torah that says, do not put a stumbling block before the blind. And if we know that something that we are presenting to the public is going to be a stumbling block, and we don't create the space in which we can talk about this, then that is essentially, transgressing what Torah says not to do, which is just putting this stumbling. Somebody's going to say, it's a physical stumbling block, sis. No, doctrine are spiritual stumbling blocks. And this is why everybody's falling all over the place, in my estimation. But I relinquish to my sister Sheikah the mic.
Okay. I guess my
you can answer first, brother, if you like.
Yeah, my response to that would be, I guess it would be more of a question back to you, because like we all know libation is a form of, I guess, connecting to the Most High and rededicating yourself, right? I think we all understand that. If a person is pouring a libation and they choose to pour it to another deity, that is on them, because that's the issue. Because we have to check, like, that's an issue within that person. They're clearly not praying to Yah. They're clearly not Israel by the verb meaning of it, because they're not connected to the Most High that we serve. And at the time of people pouring libations, they were people pouring libations to Yah, and those people pouring libations to other deities. That was the issue. That's what the issue of the northern tribes was, and also in the southern kingdom, they were actually taking after other gods. But if we have the mindset that we're pouring this to our one source of power, Yah, I don't see a problem with pouring libations. And secondly, not everybody is just going to be pouring libations left and right. Pouring libations is kind of like a dedication or a deeper form of commitment. And these are things that one must be learned how to do. Just like the rabbi said, they actually teach you. I have not gone through this process. I personally do not pour libations because I want to be taught properly how to pour a libation. I'm not that reckless with my connection to Yah to do something that is not seen as beneficial in his eyes. And so I want to go through that process to learn how to properly pour a libation. So I'm not one of these overzealous Hebrews that's out here doing things. But at the same time, I'm someone who's open to understand the indigenous culture of our people, and I can accept it without rejecting it. And I think a lot of people reject things before they actually even look into it on a deeper level. And that's something that I guess I want to open people's eyes up to. There's a lot of things, a lot of customs that we have that we may not fully understand, but we do. And pouring a libation is one of the deeper forms of the connection or prayer, however you want to call it. And we must definitely do it appropriately, do it correctly.
And thank you for bringing that understanding and that petition that we look deeper into the concept before wholesale, rejecting it wholesale. I want to bring in Sister Sheikah now because I believe that she wants to speak to you as well. Sister Sheikah, the mic is yours.
Okay. Shalom, Kyle. Thank you for coming
Shalom, Sheikah.
in.
How you doing?
Oh, good.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh, no problem. I was like, get on here. Okay. So, but I did have a question because you said that there was a designation of who that not everybody should do it. Is there a designation or qualification of who should do it? Because I didn't see that, or maybe I just missed it in the video.
I don't think it was in the video per se, but it was basically, I guess it was a order of teaching people. So I mean, like, I'm not saying that everybody can just go out here and pour libations tomorrow, but one must be properly taught how to pour a libation. That's what my point was.
Okay, so as long as you have the proper training, then we are, then that would be the person who would do that. Okay. And I just asked that because, you know, in congregations such as yours, such as mine, there's always a leader. And so it's like, is that the person who should do it? Or, you know, things of that nature. So that clarifies that. Also today we were talking about the rituals that we have or we had prior to coming to this continent, and how they have been demonized in media and in this Western culture to make it seem as though those things are just, devil's work. And this is for clarification. I'm not talking about anybody on the panel, but for clarification for those who may be listening and have no idea about what these things are, can you explain why is it important? You kind of went into it, but why is it important that we get back to those things and basically discard the images that we see in media?
I'm not quite sure if I fully understand your question, to be honest with you.
Okay, we talked about today how, yes. Okay, we talked a bit about today how those images of our practices are displayed in media and demonized. And so my question to you would be, what would be the purpose? Why do you think that they were demonized? And also, what would be the advantage for us to discard those images and get back to our practices and rituals?
Well, I mean, I think one of the main things is, like, as far as discarding those images, is returning to our original self, returning to our original culture. A lot of times when we study anything to do with Hebrewism or Judaism or being a Jew, the sources that we're going to are not upon ourselves. So we're not going to the Yoruba people. We're not going to the Ashanti, the Ga, or the Dumbe people, and we're not going to those limbo priests who pass down things from generation to generation, And we're not going to those people to find out actual information through oral tradition. We're going to the people who actually conquered the land and asking them for our history back and our culture back. And when we talked earlier, I did mention things as far as Zoroastrianism belief and the Magi and these different things that were heavily influenced into our text. And we know it's there, but we kind of avoid it. You can look at 2 Kings when King Hezekiah basically said, "Hey, whatever you want us to do, we'll do it. Just let us go back into our land in peace." And we forget about those things, and we don't look at the significance of the fact that we actually even had another person from a different land that we call a Messiah. Like, I don't understand how it's even possible, you know. And like we overlook those things because we thought they're not important, but we don't look into the culture that they infuse into our system. And so, yes, the people who are in that land now, they definitely follow the Judaic religion that was formed by the merging of Hebraic culture with the Zoroastrian culture, and now we call it Judaism, and we all kind of assimilate to Judaism instead of the original Hebraic mind state and culture. It's many things, like even the concept of henotheism versus monotheism. Prior to that, we were henotheistic. After which we became monotheistic, and we attributed it to the conquest and the return and of peace to our land. But it was all due to Zoroastrian influences, and we just kind of skip over that part because we feel like it's not that really important. And that's what my main, I guess, topic of discussion is how do we address the Zoroastrian influences to Hebraic culture, which now form Judaism.
Brother, and that was. Hello.
Yeah, this is my.
Can I address him real quick?
Sheikah, I'll let you. Do you want to continue? So you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that I thought all of that was interesting because we did have that conversation today. But I also wanted to point out that one of the conclusions that we had came up today was because of the power that getting back to that may have. And the reason why I say that is that I don't know who on the panel or in conversation has listened to or saw the documentary 1804, but it was through their strong spiritual beliefs that they were able to fight a 12-year war and eventually gain freedom. They believed so deeply that their spirit would live on even if their bodies did, and so they were able to act on it. And so a lot of times when we see African culture in media, we see it demonized and spooktified because there is an agenda of trying to get us away from those practices to keep us in a state of powerlessness at times. So that's my only commentary to that.
I fully agree with you. Like when we discussed things earlier, I had no disagreement with pretty much anything you were saying. So I agree.
I wanted to address one of the things that you said, this idea that we're not going to these Hebrew spaces on the continent and asking them. Instead, we're looking at these other European spaces and these other sources and not going to the Ashanti and you mentioned Limba, but earlier you disqualified the Limba. But the idea of not going to the continent, which brings me to another sentence in Only Love's statement, which again I want to remind the listening audience that she's currently on the ground in Nigeria and in Ghana and having these conversations. And she says, Sister Only Love spoke to 3 Nigerian elders in Nigeria about libations and other rituals, which speaks to your concern of we're not talking to them. So she's talking to them. She's talking to 3 Nigerian elders in Nigeria about libations and other rituals such as sacrifices, and the elders were from 2 different tribes, and the current pouring of libations was discouraged. So if the contention is we're not asking them, the ones that we're saying have an unbroken connection to the Hebrewisms that we are only reading about in the text instead of going to the living and the breathing. She went to the living and the breathing and said, elders, what do we do about libations? And they said, don't do it. So what happens when we go to the people that you say we should go to and they say, don't do it? Do we say, well, what about that? on the continent who have this unbroken connection that we're saying is a very, very important factor in this, and we go to them, and they say don't do it. It's not Mayana in 2018 in Brooklyn, and it's not EMUNAH, and it's not the panel, and it's not the people who just don't understand divine, but instead we're going to the very people we're being pointed to, and they are saying don't do it. So where do we put that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand your point. I understand your position. What I'm saying is everybody did not pour libation. And so if you're going to 3 people in Nigeria, which is about 500 million people in that continent, that country, then you're greatly limiting yourself on the people, the different Babatundes, you got different priesthoods that are set up, and different priesthoods do different things. And it's not. I've never said, Divine has never said that everybody in West Africa pours libation. What we are saying is there is trace evidence of a culture that has been passed down from generation to generation, and it is seen in West Africa. We never have said that everybody pours it. We never have said that everybody should pour it. And I think you're misconstruing the information that we're bringing forth, and you're making it seem like we say everybody in West Africa pours libations. We never said that. We never said everybody in America or the Americans should pour libations. We never have said that. And I think you're missing the point. This is a strictly historical connection from people who are in Israel to people who are in West Africa today, and we're showing a connection. That's all it is.
No, I want to make a point here that I never said that you did say everyone in West Africa. I never said that. In fact, I'm the one that said Africa. Not one block. What I did say is that you specifically mentioned the Ashanti. She's there with the Ashanti. You said no one went and asked the Ashantis. So I'm sharing with you that one of the women on our panel literally went and asked the Ashanti, like you said we should do, and the Ashanti said don't do it. So my question to you was, what happens when you do what you said to do, and they said don't do it?
No, what I'm saying is you use a sentence, you use something I said, and you putting it out of context. What I said specifically was when we look to study our culture, we do not go. And I'm talking about not one person. I'm talking about as a whole. I'm talking about as a nation of people who are spread out, and they're in North America and South America, wherever else we're going to be. I'm saying that when we go on Google, whatever you go on, go look at history books. We're not looking to West Africa. We're looking to the Jewish people that practices Judaism as a whole. I'm not talking specifically about one person. I'm talking about as a whole, as a group of people. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying.
All of us to get up and go to. We sent one person to. We have one person who went and asked. I'm not saying that she is asking everybody in West Africa. I'm using one of the examples you gave was the Ashanti. I'm not saying the Ashanti was everybody you mentioned, but you did mention the Ashanti, and I'm giving you the example of one of the people that you listed. Somebody actually did go and ask them, what do we do? And they said, don't do it. I don't know that if I go to the Limba will not have a different answer. I didn't say they wouldn't. But I'm saying that since you gave us a list of people, the one that I can check off is the Ashanti. And the Ashanti said, don't do it. The people in Nigeria are saying, or at least the ones that she's visited, are saying, don't do it. And rather than say, I'm misrepresenting or misunderstanding what you are saying, what I'm doing is saying, I heard you. One of the things you mentioned, I can actually address. I can't address all of them. This is the one that I can address. What do we do in that case? And instead of dismissing the case that I brought in front of you, I'm asking you to give me an answer. What do we do about you said Ashanti. I gave you Ashanti. What do we think about that? Do we just say, okay, well, the Ashantis are, other than, actually, let me know if I'm getting this right. You did say that, you aren't saying everybody, and because not everybody is doing it, that's okay. It's okay that not everybody in Africa is doing it. That only certain people are doing it because there are differences among Hebrew nations, and that certain people in certain Hebrew nations did do it, and maybe the Ashanti and people like them aren't one of them. But that should not discourage people from pursuing the other African Hebrews that may still want to preserve the libation tradition. Is that correct to say?
It's correct to say that the information was put forth. It was never a directive to have everybody start pouring libations. It was never a directive or even a glimpse into saying that everybody in West Africa pours libation. Like even the rabbi, I believe he is a Khan. Ashanti is a sub-tribe of Akan. Ashanti may not pour libation to the three people that you talk to, but through that community, which is the head of that community, through the Akan people, they pour libation. That's what the rabbi literally told us on Tuesday. He told you how to pour them. He said there's ceremonies on how to pour them. He actually described it in great detail.
I know. I asked
you.
Did that?
And what do you think?
Only certain people, even in those spaces, everybody couldn't do it. Certain people could do it, and only those people could do it. And under the guidance or permission of someone who's authorized to do it, that they could do it with them or with that particular permission. I know because I solicited the answer to that question. And again, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you said any of those things. I'm agreeing with you that you did not at any point say that everyone had to do it. But there isn't. Do you understand, do you accept that there is a language in there that says that everybody could do it?
Could and do is totally different things. That's my point. Like,
yeah, that's
right
my
now,
point. I didn't say that you said, or that I'm saying that you said, or Ron or anyone else said that they must do it. We never said that. We're having two different conversations. We never said that you're telling people to go out and do it. I said, and EMUNAH and I are contesting whether or not we can do it, not whether or not you said to do it. So what I'm saying, is it true or not true, or is it fair to say that the conversation on the table is the people could do it? Because that's the conversation we're asking. Can they do it? Because if you listen to the presentation EMUNAH put, she said, yes, on Tuesday, she said, yes, Jacob did it, but can you? But can you? And so my question to you is, are you saying that we could do it?
I believe that at this point we all could. We all have the ability to, but we have to be properly trained to do so. You don't want to just go outside and with a bottle of wine and some oil out of your cabinet and pour a libation and not know the tradition or the culture behind what you're doing. So you need to be trained on when you pour a libation, how to pour a libation. Typically, they do it at ceremonies. If you have been a consecration or something, a lot of times if there's sometimes even a childbirth or any major events, you don't just want to pour a libation and say, thank you for these new clothes I got. Like, it has to be a deeper meaning behind the pouring of libation. And like I said, I'm not a trained pourer of libations. I'm just simply saying that these things are evident in the culture of West Africa, and historically, that's all I am saying.
No, I appreciate that, and I do understand that is your position. So I think it raises one question for me, and I'll turn it back over to the panel. We're all hearing consistently that someone must train, and for me that sounds a lot like the refrain that, you can't practice polygyny with everybody. It has to be that righteous brother, and it's like, what brother's going to say he's not righteous? So who is this person that we have to go get training from? I mean, do we need to go? Are you saying that maybe someone from the continent who has had this unbroken line should be the one that comes and trains the people here in the diaspora, or is there somebody here that somehow is endowed with this ancient knowledge that they are prepared to do it? Like, who's this person? Who's the person that we would get training from? That becomes my question if we are to entertain this line of questioning. I would love to hear your response to that. Also, I want the panel to know that the table is open. So as the brother provides his thoughts on that question, whoever has a question for the brother can chime in. I'm not calling any names.
Gotcha. So this is my opinion. My opinion does not represent Kingdom Harbor Ministries or Divine Prospect or JC or anybody like that. It is my personal opinion. I believe that if you're going to pour a libation based on the cultural oral tradition that was passed down, then I would go to Baba Tunde or a griot or someone who has that oral tradition and it has the ability to properly train me in the priesthood to do so.
Thank you for that. That's an answer I would expect. Thank you so much for that. Please stay with us. I'm sure you would like to talk to the ladies. The ladies would like to talk to you. We don't have any callers waiting, so it's all about you right now, brother.
Real session, huh?
Sisters, do you have anything for our brother who's being a tremendously great sport, talking to us here, since we weren't able to get Divine, but this is another very well-researched, very informed brother, so we appreciate him.
Yeah, I'm one of his minions.
Now, when I call you his minions, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. If you want to shout out the rest of the crew, you go ahead and do that. We made some really great friends today, so if you want to go ahead and shout out the rest of the crew, they were a great sport today, sharing information. That would be fine.
Yeah, I just want to shout out the whole squad from ACA, Hebrew Congregation of Atlanta, Mr. Carnes. All praises to him. He's been a blessing to us. Ron, Brian, Frank. Frank is amazing. And just the whole squad, and just, Barak Hashem.
All right, tell Frank he's about to get a friend request. All right, sisters, we have the brother on the line. We're a little bit past the 10:30 hour, so I know everybody has to go to work in the morning. So go ahead and ask the brother some of your last questions. We'll round this over and get our last thoughts after that. And, again, I want to thank you, Brother Kyle, for calling in and being such a great sport. Ladies, go ahead. He's all yours.
I know my ladies.
Sorry. Go ahead.
This is Malaka. Shalom, brother. I'm really appreciative of your taking the time to talk with us and being here tonight. And I know, we can kind of put you in the hot seat for a minute or two, but it's all love. It's all love.
Yeah, I know.
I think my question, and first of all, I don't want to say that I completely and wholeheartedly reject the idea of drink offering. I don't completely reject the idea of it. What I'm looking for is just clarity as to our purposes for pouring them, who's pouring them, and when they're being poured. Because, at the end of the day, it makes me think of, the game that we played when we were kids, telephone. I'm older, so you might not have ever played this game, but where you whisper something in someone's ear, and then they whisper something in the next person's ear, and the next person, it goes down the line, and you try to see if the last person is saying anything close to what the first person said. And if you've ever played that game, you know that 9 times out of 10, the last person's going to say something that's either completely different than what the first person said or slightly different. It depends on how accurately the information was communicated. And so I guess, what I'm saying is that when you watch the video, there are some things that are left kind of unsaid, can be then spoken of and passed on to the next person in a way that could end up being a message that the original speaker didn't intend. And so that was my concern. I see us wanting to tap into our culture and not be influenced by Judaism, and I'm all for that. When I came into the Hebraic community, I was looking for every way to honor the Sabbath and every way to keep the feast days that wasn't coming from Ashkenaz or Sephardic origins. I was, researching. That's actually how I kind of came into contact with Sister Only Love, because she was giving me that kind of information. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that passion. But here's my question: are we going to teach people about these connections without giving them guidance concerning the appropriating of, I don't want to say appropriating, not giving them guidance regarding the administration of these things, like who should do it, when should it be done, because we're so hungry for culture that all you have to do is say to a Hebrew, this is our culture, and they're running with it before they've even really researched Torah, listened to it to find out, why it's done, when it's done. And you know that about us. We're very hungry for culture. And so we're looking to fill in those empty places. But in doing that, don't we have some accountability to not just say, okay, this is a time capsule, we're giving you a view of the time capsule, but to explain this is where, this is how we did it in pre-exilic times. This is what we did. These are some of the problems that came up with what we were doing. This is, maybe what you want to look at in terms of getting trained before you do it. You know what I mean? Like when you put something out there like this, there's really a need for guidance with the information. If we were a fully formed nation operating with our priests and elders and things completely intact, then I would say, okay, just provide the information. But we're bones, having the sinew and the flesh put back on us. So when you just put information out there, so isn't there, isn't more needed? And do you all plan on doing more to address that?
Yeah, okay, so, and thank you for your question, because I really feel that that's one of the most important questions on this whole discussion is the why that video was even shot. And I'm sure you're referring to the video that when you saw the divine pouring the drink offering, right?
Right.
Okay, so let me give you the backdrop on that video. It was a brother, the really tall brother. He actually from out of town. He came into town, and they were just building, and he like, okay, let me show you how non-spooky this Bible is when you actually understand that this is a connection. So he was actually showing the connection and showing how things that we look at in West Africa we feel are paganistic or spookism or demonized, like all y'all said, in society, things are actually being done. And it was a video to show people that these things are being done by Hebrews in West Africa, and this is how it looks. Specifically, he said that this is not for everybody. Not everybody supposed to do this or can do it or should do it or whatever. But it was just a video to show what a libation looks like. And I believe he has a presentation coming out with a lot more information about libations. And the priesthood basically...
Let me ask you a question real quick. Because when in Torah, I don't really see... I see the concept of drink offering, and so that's where I was getting with the game of telephone. I know that West Africa is definitely a time capsule for much of our culture. I totally accept that. I believe that, and I would much rather look in those spaces for confirmation of culture than in the state of Israel as it stands right now. So I get that. But, like that game of telephone where the message gets kind of distorted, the customs that we're seeing have been passed down for ages, but are they being done exactly the way they were first organized, straighted in Torah? Because in Torah they were drink offerings. They weren't libations.
But they're the exact same thing. That's what I'm saying.
But are they?
I want to remind
a libation is a drink offering. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm just interrupting you quite rudely. Just to remind everybody that we have only less than 15 minutes left on the air, but please continue your conversation. I just wanted you to be aware of the time so that you don't get cut off, and we have a chance to give everyone, including our impromptu special guests, some last thoughts as we wind down until the 11 o'clock hour.
Okay, so my understanding was a drink offering was poured unto the Most High. A libation was poured in honor of something or someone. So you're saying a libation is just an offering to the Most High. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're basically, in a sense, they're the same thing. Like, if you're pouring a libation or you're pouring a drink offering is basically the exact same process. You pour, I believe, is a third of a gallon or something like that. And like I said, I'm not a professional at libation, but it specifies how much you're supposed to pour, and it specifies why.
I'm not talking about the measurements and stuff. I'm talking about the intention of the pouring. libation and drink offering, I don't think they have the same intention 100% of the time.
I
There are
mean,
libations
that's
that
something.
are for the honoring of the dead and the ancestors, and then there are, libations that are poured for the birth of a child. So there's different reasons that libations are poured, whereas in Torah, drink offerings are poured to honor the Most High or to sanctify oneself unto Him, right? So I just think the generalized word of libation is kind of like that game of telephone where, it started out drink offering and ended up libation.
Okay, so I'm using these terms colloquially, and what I'm saying is if you're actually pouring a drink offering, you're pouring a libation as a colloquial term. So because we're talking about libations, and if you want to separate them, then we can definitely go into that, but that's not my area of expertise, just to be totally honest with you. Because like I said, I do not pour drink offerings. I do not pour libation because I have not been trained to do so. But like I'm saying, on a historical tip, because I like history more than I like religion. This is my personal thing, and so that's a question that you may need to ask Ron or someone who deals more with the actual scripts themselves more than West African culture.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Look at that. We made it all the way to about 10:50 p.m. here in New York City. Thank you so much. You're calling from Georgia, right, brother?
Yeah, Atlanta.
You're in Atlanta. Hallelujah. Thank you so much for being here. Hang out with us as we give our final thoughts. Total Most High, first I want to give all thanks and all praise to the Holy One of Creation, and that prayerfully this conversation has been edifying to everyone on the panel and to our listening audience. I want to give a special thank you to Sal for bringing us all the way through to the end of the season, to this moment, and to all of the sisters that have joined me here under the palm, and our brother who has given us clarity and another example of how the masculine and feminine principle can get together, can have conversations, can get through uncomfortable moments and get to the other side of these important conversations. So I want to begin by bringing in our guest, Sheikah, so that she can have her final thoughts and whatever she wants to say to us and the people.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to say that as far as my position, with the right training, at the right times, with the right spirit, we can delve into these rituals and return. And I think it's a matter of culture, return to our culture, return to the things that we were doing, return to the Most High, as He says, and promised that He would return to us if we did so. So that's my position. I think we need to examine every ritual or every practice that we're going to implement with this much rigor, this much information and tough examination and questions to make sure that the boundaries around it are set, so that way the whole community knows. Because sometimes when we get bits and pieces, it may not be the fullness of what is being presented. And so, sorry tonight, a little jumping up on between two houses and getting ready to celebrate my nephew's graduation. Go Makai.
Hallelujah. All praises.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Shalom.
We don't have a lot of time. I want to give you, Kyle, you can have 2 minutes. I'm gonna stop you after 2 minutes, but if you want to give a closing thought before I go to Malaka and Amuzin for their closing thoughts, I'll give you the floor.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to give all praises to y'all that we were able to, have a civil conversation about, pressing matters. And, at the end of the day, it's not about what's being right or being wrong. It's about us coming together as a nation of people and doing what's right in the eyes of Yah. And I think that we all have brilliant minds, and it just takes us to analyze, just culture and text together to come up with, what we feel because I feel some kind of way, because you feel some kind of way, it doesn't make it right. We got to do what's best for us as a nation of people. Mm-hmm. And going back to the motherland or to West Africa or to Israel is the reason or the motivation for a person, I would never discourage that because it's bringing another brother or another sister closer to the Most High. And we all have different paths. We all have different things we're struggling with, but we all have one common goal, and that's Israel. And I just feel like, a lot of us look for reasons to separate than the reasons to divide. Than to be together. And I pray that we can all come together one day and fulfill the destiny, basically. So.
Wow! Hallelujah! 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 I'm really very quite pleased that you called in and you were able to rock out with us all the way almost until the 11 o'clock hour. Stay on the line and listen to the last closing thoughts, and prayerfully when we return for season 2 of Under the Palm and season 4 of the Relationship Challenge, that you'll call in and share some more thoughts with us.
Indeed.
Hallelujah. Malaka, look at that. We made a new friend, Malaka. Do you have any closing thoughts to share with the people?
Well, I did take a moment and look up the Hebrew for drink offering in this set, which they did say, it can be introduced with libation. So I understand that. But in closing, what I would say is, I think that as we seek to restore culture, we have to be careful not to trust in the restoration of culture as opposed to relying upon obedience to Torah. I think restoration of culture is important, and I understand the concept of the people who fought the 12-year war being able to draw upon their own spiritual knowledge to endure that war and to be successful in that war. I think that it's important for us to find a balance of not trusting in the things that we're able to restore versus the things that Yah has told us to do. I think that there's not an either or. It's a both. Mm-hmm. If we're going to restore culture, but we're also going to be obedient. And so I think that's why these conversations need to happen, because restoration of culture can empower us, but being obedient to the Most High's words and doing the things He tells us to do in the way He tells us to do them is more empowering than even the restoration of our culture. And so with that, I'll say those who are new in the faith, who are coming across these conversations and coming across these videos, I want to encourage you to find an elder that can help you walk through these things and look in the scripture for these things, because just because we see it in a video doesn't mean we understand all the background. Brother Khalil just explained to us the background in which Brother Ron was doing that demonstration. We weren't privy to the background, so we lost a whole lot in that connection of why that was being done. And so I just want to encourage you, get an elder, sit down, go through these questions with an elder. Don't just run off with something because someone says it's the culture. You got to make sure that you're being obedient along with restoring the culture. So with that, I'll yield.
But Sal's letting me know we're down to the 3-minute mark. So, EMUNAH, if you want to go ahead and give us our last thoughts about reverse migration, libation, promise, and problem resolution, the mic is yours.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Sister Malaka just said. All praise be to the Most High. Culture is tied to tradition. Tradition is tied to actions. Action is tied to thoughts. If the thought was off, then the action is off, then the tradition is off, then the culture is off. And so all of these things must come into the microscope. And as we return, we should take care not to recontaminate the waters. Because that the waters were already contaminated. And so if we go back and do the very same thing, we've negated the purpose of why we are here in the first place. So as Sister Malaka said, I behoove everybody, there's a responsibility when we present information to the public that we are aware that there are all manner of people who are listening. And we cannot be irresponsible with the information that we are presented to the public, no matter who they are. Like Sister Esther Brown said, no one is above reproach. No one is above listen, I want to take you aside. I want to talk to you. What's going on? Because there are people behind us. There are people who are coming who will stumble. because we were careless, because we neglected to give them the full story, and because they were zealous, not according to knowledge, and they run off into something that can definitely hurt themselves. I would just say this as well in closing, that the revealed things are unto man and the concealed things are unto the Most High. When we begin to touch spirituality,